Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto, son of Magneto's men. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Maverick9871 and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Blue Tigre. Professor Xavier was bound to a prison chair in the lowest levels of Apocalypse's dungeon. Suddenly the door creaked and was blown off the hinges toward the hallway, and a figure stepped inside. "Well, Charles, you sure got yourself into a fine mess this time, my old friend." Xavier looked up and said, "Eric, what are you doing here?" Magneto said, "Simple. Your X-Men and my brotherhood have a common foe this time. When you were captured, we joined forces. Apocalypse just jumped back out of the time stream again for who knows how long this time. Bishop helped us get here. Now let me take that damn helmet off your head." Charles said, "No, don't." Stopping Eric. Eric saw the look on his one-time friend's face. "Why?" Charles said, "There is someone else down here in pain, extreme pain. I don't know what Apocalypse was doing to him, but he had blown through all my mental barriers with his cries for help. We must find him first. This helmet is the only thing stopping him from destroying my mind." Eric nodded and put the hover chair in front of Charles, helping him into it. "Very well. I will help you until we leave here. Then our truce is over." Charles nods, agreeing. "Thank you," he said. They both leave the room looking for the other person. Around 20 minutes later they come upon a steel door with the words "Next Evolution" written on it. Magneto uses his power of magnetism to pull the door open and both enter the room and gasp. There, in a tank filled with liquid, was a blonde boy who looked maybe 4 years old. Xavier goes over to the tank and puts his hand on it and quickly pulled it away, saying, "My God, what has he done?" His voice filled with terror and anger at the same time. Magneto asked, "What is it, Charles?" The professor said, "This boy, he is the source of the pain. He's been altered genetically." Magneto frowned. "What do you mean by altered genetically?" His eyes narrow as he rubs his arm where the concentration camp number was tattooed into his skin. Xavier replied, "This boy has had countless things done to him. Tell me, what do you feel inside of him? Is it the same as?" Magneto moves closer, touching the tank with the boy inside. A moment passes as his power reads the boy and goes wide-eyed and shakes his head and says, "Yes, adamantium bonded. I guess Apocalypse was wanting to make a clone of Wolverine." Xavier goes to the computer and starts looking at files, hacking into the system with skill and finesse. "Not just him, I'm afraid. It looks like he used you, me, Iceman, Storm, Rogue, Gambit, Nightcrawler, Mystique and Pyro. He must have wanted to turn this boy into an ultimate soldier and then clone him. He's only had him for 6 months and has already added all of those genetic materials to the boy. What is even more miraculous is that they have been accepted into his body." Magneto spoke with mild shock in his voice, "But how is that possible? Sure, 1 or 2 could be expected. I mean, Rogue's ability could make it happen, but only for a little while. And with her, she has to kill the other person to keep that power, causing mental backlash. How can this child have survived them all?" Xavier had continued to read, scanning files and documents. "My God, you bastard. This is low, even for you, Apocalypse." Magneto leaned closer, trying to read what his friend had. "What?" Xavier typed something and a monitor screen came to life on the wall. It showed Apocalypse at work, doing the bonding of the various DNAs to the boys. As he worked he spoke, recording the procedure for future viewings. "This is it. After all my years of research, I have finally found a way to make the perfect mutant. I just had to use one of my earlier projects on a parallel world where mutant DNA took a different evolution. It became what they call bloodlines, and I have bonded it with a non-bloodline human infant. Yes, the village leader was an idiot, sacrificing his own life as well as his own son's to put that creature into his body. By doing that, it made it acceptable to most mutant DNA. Unfortunately, I have not found a way to manipulate it to the point where I can safely have it take Cyclops' optic power yet. But given time, it should work. The only thing I do not like is the boy's mind. After I gave him the psychic power from Charles Xavier, he was able to destroy my little pet inside of him. By doing so, it caused the creature to be absorbed by the boy. He has also had an adverse reaction to Rogue's DNA, but for now I will leave it be since he is still coming along so nicely. Oh well, I can always recreate the project known as Kyuubi and send it back to that world. In the meantime, I can keep adding more DNAs and working on this prototype. Ha ha ha." The screen faded to black, showing reflections of their shocked faces. Magneto said shakily, "That's low, Charles. Even they were not that low. This boy, does he have a name?" Charles typed some more, looking for the data, and the screen came to life again. This time it showed the village of Konoha, and Apocalypse's voice said, "This is the village Konoha, coordinates 240x 154y 89z test subject. Kyuubi, known to the humans as Naruto Uzumaki Akanamikaze, was born on October 10th. Subject shows signs of advanced healing as viewed on these occasions. The visual of the peaceful village changed to a scene of several mob attacks on the boy. Each time he was saved by the same man and a few others wearing masks. Subject was taken on his third birthday after an attack on his life. He had already formed an emotional bond to one known as the Sandaime Hokage, or as the subject refers to him as Gigi. Decision to take child now was so he could be mentally conditioned after the initial tests were complete and have him dedicated to my agendas. After that, the screen went blank again. Both men looked at each other and then to the child. They were still staring at the boy when Wolverine, Cyclops and Rogue ran in. Cyclops asked, "Are you okay, Professor?" Charles looked at Naruto and shook his head angrily. "No, I'm pissed." Wolverine, "Cut the boy out of there, but don't touch him. For now, Rogue will have to." Rogue nodded but looked at the professor with mild doubt. "But Professor, you know I can't touch him." Charles spoke softly. "Rogue, for now I think you might be the only one who can touch him. Cyclops, have Forge and Bishop go through this computer and get me everything they can from it. I want to find out what else that bastard has done to this boy." Wolverine thrust out his claws and said, "Let's get cutting." And he made a single slash with each arm against the glass, forming an X with sharp cracking sounds. It shattered and Rogue walked carefully over after the fluid drained away and picked up the shivering boy. Day's blue eyes looked up at her green ones and he gently touched her face. Rouge felt stunned when he touched her face and nothing happened. She looked at everyone and said, gasped. He's not affected." Charles asked gently. "Is he draining you of your power?" She shakes her head no, and Wolverine looks at the boy and narrowed his eyes. The boy's hand falls back to his chest, shaking with cold, and Wolverine reaches out and places the small hand in his own. Again, nothing happened. The professor raised an eyebrow and sat back in his hover chair. "Interesting." Cyclops finished speaking on the comm link to the other X-Men. "They're on their way, Professor." "Who is the boy, sir?" Charles looked at Magneto, who shared a look between them. Then Magneto spoke. "It would probably be best if he went with you. He's too unstable and none of my brotherhood could train him or help with the mental abilities he may have. I do have one stipulation, though." Charles nods in agreement and for him to continue. "If you can, help the boy and make him stable. I will train him to be able to use my powers, however. Should he become unstable and a threat to us, you must kill him. Is that acceptable?" Charles asked, "Why would you want to train him in your powers?" Magneto snorted. "Apocalypse is a fool. If this boy is trained right, becomes stable and sides with our side against him. Then we may have a way to kill him once and for all. Also, I don't want to see another child go through what we saw earlier." Charles looked back at the blank screen and shudders at the images passing through his mind. "Agreed, Eric." Eric nods and leaves, nodding to Bishop and Forge, who eye the room and the young boy. Forge looks hungrily at the computers but goes to the professor first and asks him what they are to do. 2 weeks later in Konoha, the Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi hears inside as he did some paperwork when a voice said, "Hello Hokage-sama." Causing the third to look up and see a bald man in a weird chair with a boy whose skin was bluish black and almost looked like fur. As the boy smiled, he noticed a tail swishing behind him. The sight made him pale, but he narrowed his eyes and glared at the intruders. The third asked, "Who are you and how did you get in here?" The bald man said, "My name is Charles Xavier and this is one of my students, Nightcrawler. As for how we got here, that is one of Nightcrawler's special abilities. The ability to appear anywhere he has been before or can see." The third nodded warily and asked, "Well, why have you come here like this?" He wanted to prepare to attack if it was necessary, but he found he could not move. Xavier held his hands up, indicating he was there for peaceful reasons. "Does the name Naruto Namikaze mean anything to you?" This made the third wide-eyed for a moment and he asked, "Perhaps, why?" Xavier nods his head to Nightcrawler and he held out a folder that was under his arm to the Hokage. Warily, he took it and opened it slowly. When he saw the photo that was inside, he gasped and asked shakily, "What have you done to him?" "That was done by someone else. We recently rescued him, but because of what had happened to him, he will need training by me and my students in his new abilities. He is also mentally unstable thanks to all the torture he felt. By not only the man who did that to him but also this village." Charles said with a touch of scorn at the word village. The third scowled, angry that this stranger thought so little of his village. "Who did this and where is he? I want to see Naruto." Charles tossed a watch onto the desk and said, "That is a special watch. It allows a user to travel from one place to another in time, or in this case dimensions. Push the red button and you will enter the time stream. From there, you can any place you want. And when you're ready to return home, you just push the green button. If you want to see him, then you must come." Holding out his hand, he gently takes back the folder that was held limply in the third's hand. Nightcrawler and Charles both pushed the green buttons on their wrists and vanish, leaving the Hokage to think about just what he was going to do. Slowly, he picked up the watch and fingered the red button, deciding what to do. A few hours later the third Hokage appeared on a strange walkway with nothing but multicolored clouds streaking by. Floating in front of him is a beautiful woman with fiery red hair and a green bodysuit with a gold sash around her waist. A familiar symbol is on her chest and holding the sash at her hip. It's a fabled phoenix, a mystical bird that is reborn from its own ashes. She smiles gently at him and speaks in a low melodic voice. "Welcome Hokage-sama. I am Jean Grey. The professor asked me to wait for you and lead you to where Naruto is." The third said, "What is this place?" Jean was quiet a moment and spoke carefully. "This is the time stream. It allows people to travel from one point in time to another. It was also where we rescued Naruto from." "Rescued him from who or what?" he asked, moving closer to the beautiful woman. Jean said, "I am sorry, but you will have to ask the professor about that. One rule about messing with different times and dimensions is we try not to change too much or give too much information if possible. Technology from one time or place could destroy another entire dimension if used even once there." The third said, "Very well. I can see where that could be true. But until I see Naruto and I am sure he is okay, I won't trust you." Jean smiled and said, "Understandable." As they appeared at an end of a walkway, Jean held up a small device and a circular white portal appeared. She stepped through and the third followed her carefully. The third blinked as he came out into bright sunshine and looked around and saw himself outside of a strange building. The design was unfamiliar and he saw a sign in a language he couldn't understand. Pointing to it, he asked, "What does that say?" Jean said, "Oh, forgive me. You see that watch the professor gave you? It allows you to understand English, which is the language spoken in this location of the world. In your world, I believe it is Japanese. Now all you have to do is press the white button on the watch and point it at any sign and it will translate it into Japanese for you to read." The third looked at the device and pressed the white button and a small beam scanned the sign and he read softly. "Xavier's School for the Gifted." Jean nods and said, "Now come, I need to get back to checking up on Naruto." As she led the Sandaime into the building. A few minutes later, after riding an elevator which made the third hold his stomach and mutter about jutsu, they stepped out and walked down a corridor and came to a room with the word lab written on it. Jean put her hand on the door and it slid open with a soft hiss, showing the third the small boy he'd come to see. Naruto was on a metal table, his normally sun-kissed skin as pale as the sheet covering him. He ran over to Naruto, but a man with an unusual yellow suit and a skin-tight mask covering his eyes moved to stand in front of him. The third pulled up short and glared at the man. "Why are you stopping me?" Xavier hovered in and said, "Wolverine, enough." Wolverine stepped back but gave a soft snarl at the aging Hokage. Xavier said, "Sorry about that, but we have to warn you about some of the things that have been done to him. Some of those things could kill you, so give us a few moments, please." The third nodded slowly and Xavier said, "When we recently rescued Naruto here, we got several data recordings of information showing what was done to him. If you would like to watch them with me, I can answer any questions you have if I can. Then we will try and awaken him so you can talk to him." The Sandaime sighed heavily, realizing he really had no choice if he wanted to know what had happened to the boy and said, "Very well." The third and the professor both sat in front of a monitor as it came to life and they watched as Apocalypse told about how he sent Kyuubi into the other dimension and how he kidnapped Naruto. They watched as the adamantium bonding was done to the boy as well as other unmentionable things. When it was over, the Sandaime said, "I see, that thing, that did this all, who was he?" Xavier said, "He goes by the name Apocalypse. As best as we can tell, he is thousands of years old. He believes that he can control the evolution of mankind and he wants to be revered as a god. We believe he was actually one of the first mutants but can't tell for sure." Sarutobi asked, "What is a mutant?" Xavier frowned a moment, trying to word it so the man would understand and said, "The best way I can explain it to you is this. In your world, you have what is called bloodlines, correct?" The third nods and Xavier said, "Well, those bloodlines are created when humans carry an extra genetic sequence in their DNA. However, that sequence is constantly repeated from parent to child. In this world, the extra sequence appears randomly, meaning that sometimes parents have it and children don't or vice versa. It is random and what it does also is random. In our history, when mutants used to appear, they were hunted down and killed for being different. But, in the last 100 years nearly 1/5 of the world population suddenly got the extra DNA sequence, so we are not sure of what the long-term implications this will be. It is possible that the extra sequence will stabilize and become bloodlines for our world, but it's too early to tell. We also don't know what effect it will have on Naruto, since your world's DNA is more set." The third nods, getting most of it because 2 of his students had worked with DNA before and he knew of the extra sequence as well as some of the terminology. He then asked that metal that is inside of him, what is it? Wolverine popped out his claws and said adamantium. It is the hardest known metal in the world. Once it is heated and molded to a frame it is impossible to break. Nodding in understanding, the third asked, are yours natural or were they made like what happened to Naruto? Wolverine said I was born with an advanced healing ability similar to what the kid has. A scientist in another country captured me and did that to me also, but when he did it, it wiped out most of my memories except for the last year before that day. Okay, I can understand the metal now and the healing ability since he had that before his kidnapping, thanks to the Kyuubi. What other things can he do? Xavier used his powers and mentally linked to the third. He now has my power and I have the ability to read people's minds. Right now, though, he is unstable and can't control it. And it could kill him unless he's trained or he could kill others by accident. The third's eyes were wide and said I see. Anything else? Xavier said well, a student of mine whose codename is Rogue has a very deadly power which makes it impossible for her to touch another person without stealing their life force. I believe in your world it's called chakra, but it's not just chakra. She can also steal bloodlines as well. Naruto was given some of her DNA also, but he can touch Rogue and Wolverine both and not drain them of anything. But since your body is different than ours we are not sure if that power would activate and it might draw out your chakra. It was one of the main reasons I wanted you to understand things before we tried to wake him up. As for what else has happened to him we will have to wait until we begin testing and training him to use his powers to know for sure. Since all but 3 of the powers he was given came from the DNA of most of my students, it won't be hard to train him. And as for the other 3 well they will help also. The Sandaime nodded slowly and said this is a lot to take in. What would happen if he is not trained to use these powers? Xavier said I won't lie to you about this. Right now, Naruto is both mentally and physically unstable because of what has happened to him. His powers could either fade away or all go haywire at once and kill him and everyone around him. I honestly believe the best thing for him right now is for you to let us work with him. To understand these powers. And learn to use them correctly. We also have more knowledge of what mutant genes do to the bodies they inhabit and if something life-threatening happens to him, we have the best chance to save him. The Sandaime closed his eyes and asked if his powers are really as unstable as you claim, what would happen if he becomes a risk? Xavier said we have ways to neutralize the DNA of mutants in this world. As I told you, people fear what is different from them and some scientists have found ways to strip mutants of any and all powers. But usually it is with a slave collar. I detest this, but it would be better than the alternative. The Sandaime asked what is the alternative. Xavier looked at the doorway and said would you like to tell him Eric? The third looked over to the door at a man with red armor on and a red helmet. The man said if the boy were to truly become a risk where we are unable to stop him and save his life you would have no choice but to end it. The Sandaime said I won't allow it. Getting up into a defensive position. Magneto held his hand up and a bedpan flew and hit Sarutobi in the back of the head. Magneto said there is nothing you could do to stop it. If it gets to that point, then the chances are thousands to millions of people would be dying. Would you honestly not give the life of one boy for the lives of your entire village? From what I saw of the video, his father would. Sarutobi looked down and said I hate to admit it, but you're right. It's just that I promised his father I would protect him. The day he disappeared, I felt like I failed both of them. And then you show up with this information on him I felt like I could finally honor that wish. Xavier said I understand and we won't harm him unless absolutely necessary. Now as for the boy I think it's time to wake him. Jean walked over to Naruto and gave him a shot. She then placed her hand on his head and after a few moments, she took it away and stepped back and said, that should do it, Professor. Xavier said thank you Jean. As everyone looked at Naruto, he slowly opened his eyes and looked around sleepily at first, then frantically as he didn't recognize where he was. The Sandaime ran over to Naruto and said Naruto, it's me can you hear me? Naruto locked eyes on the Sandaime and slowly shook his head as he closed his eyes, trying to tell if it was real. Sarutobi frowned and asked what is wrong with him. Xavier said it's like I told you. He has had a lot of mental damage from this experience. He thinks you're part of his imagination right now. The Sandaime put his hand on Naruto's head and said I'm so sorry Naruto. It is really me. As he looked sadly at Naruto. Naruto looked at him and slowly raised his hand up and touched the Sandaime with one finger and then two. Then he started to cry as he grabbed hold of the robes the Sandaime wore, holding on for dear life, and he whispered weakly Gigi. The Sandaime smiled a small smile and said yes Naruto, it's me. Naruto brought his other hand over and screamed Gigi. As he pulled himself tight to the older man as he cried. After several minutes, Naruto pulled away and looked around and saw everyone and thought who are these people? Xavier said we were the ones who rescued you, Naruto, and brought your Gigi here to see you. Naruto nods and asked who are as he tried to get his mouth to move. Xavier said, I am Professor Charles Xavier, this is Magneto, a friend. Wolverine and Phoenix, both students of mine. Pointing to each person. The Sandame said, I thought your name was Jean. Jean said, it is. I told you my real name is a sign of trust. Unless you are a trusted friend, we usually go by our code names. Naruto here does not trust us yet, so until he does we will go by our code names. The Sandame nodded and said, our Anbu are similar in that matter. I take it this school for the gifted is a school for mutants to learn to control their powers and fight. Xavier said yes and no. We teach our students to control their powers, but we are working toward a world where humans and mutants can live side by side in harmony. Magneto and I are friends, and we both work for the same goal, but we go about it differently. I have created the X-Men and he created the Brotherhood. Sometimes we are allies and other times not. When it comes to Apocalypse though, we both realize the dangers he creates and work together to stop him. The Sandame nods and Naruto asked, where were you, Gigi? The Sandame wanted to break down right there but stayed strong for Naruto and said, you were kidnapped and I did not know where you were taken. These people here saved you. Naruto looked at everyone and said in a quiet voice, thank you. Wolverine walked toward Naruto and glared at him and quickly launched his claws out and acted like he was going to cut Naruto, and Naruto put out his hand to block it and one blade shot out of his hand and he cried out holding his hand, and Wolverine said, look at me kid. Naruto was looking at his hand that was hurting where the blade was sticking out and Wolverine spoke again with force. Kid, look at me now. Naruto flinched and looked at Wolverine, who said a little gentler. Don't look at your hand. Ignore the pain and relax it. When you relax your hand, twist your wrist towards your thumb and the blade should go back inside your skin. Naruto nodded and tried to calm himself down. After taking a relaxing breath, he twisted his wrist and the blade went back in. The itchy burn that followed made him look and he could see the skin healing. He looked closer at the wound and saw the wound completely seal up. Wolverine said, that is one of many things that has happened to you. Do you want to learn how to use it right so it won't hurt you? Naruto looked at the Sandame, who was looking at Naruto with sad eyes. He had not wanted to believe it, but now he saw the truth. Naruto would have to learn to control these powers because, quite simply, no one in Konoha could teach him. Naruto asked Gigi. The Sandame said, Naruto, I don't like it, but I have to agree with Xavier. These people here are the only ones who can help you now. If you come back to Konoha, you could hurt yourself or others really badly. Do you want that? Naruto looked down and the third asked Xavier. How long will it take to train him? Xavier said, it depends, really. Normally I would say around 7 years, but with what has happened to him, I would have to say 10 or 11. Sarutobi nodded and said, if you train Naruto, will he be able to come back to his homeworld? Xavier said yes. The Sandame said, Naruto's father, he wanted him to be a ninja. And I would also like for him to be one. Now, normally, ninja graduate at the age of 14 in our village, but 1 more year won't matter much. Not if it is going to help him. I want Naruto to return when he is 15, though, to be a ninja for his home. Do you agree? Naruto thought, but. Xavier said, very well. But we will need some way to teach him your ninja arts as well. So any information you can give us would be appreciated. The Sandame nodded and said, I can have everything he will need to know from the history of our world to chakra molding and other things. We don't put our children in the academy until they are 7, so if you could have someone come in say 3 years. At this, Xavier nods. Yes, 3 years to get the information he will need, I can have it already. Xavier smiles and says that's acceptable. The Sandame said, then we are in agreement. Xavier says softly. Since the Kyuubi is now dead and Naruto has these powers, the name he had before is dead. He will go by his real name and will most likely have a code name as well. If you would tell everyone that Naruto Uzumaki is dead unless he has some family left, then let only them know. The Sandame nods and says agreed. Xavier looks at the clock on the medical bay's wall. Well, it should be time for you to go because your presence will be most likely missed by now. The Sandame sighed and looked at Naruto and said, Naruto, I want you to listen to these people and trust them. I hope I can come see you sometime in the future, but I want you to grow up strong. And know that I love you and I am proud of you. Naruto smiled a small smile and hugged the Sandame. The third sighed deeply as he released the boy and was led away by Jean. Once he was gone, Naruto felt an overwhelming sadness hit him. He closed his eyes and screamed in his head. A cry that was felt all across the world and even in the time stream by everyone. Gigi. It has been nearly 11 years since that day. Naruto has grown up with the X-Men and now goes by the codename Echo. Reason being, his personality often reflected off of another person. He would mimic a person's speech, thoughts, fighting style, appearance, and even their habits perfectly. His normal way of dressing is in a pair of black pants, made out of some kind on ultra-technological fiber Forge had created, with the help of Beast and Bishop. He had a leather jacket with the words I am all noise and silence printed on the back. He doesn't wear a shirt but has a silver vest made out of nanotic fibers which can self-repair in seconds. Wearing a utility holster on his left thigh and a chakra-based pistol on his right, they attached with slick black belts around his waist. Covering his eyes, he has a pair of blue mirrored wraparound sunglasses that make it impossible to see his eyes. The pistol would not kill someone unless you hit the heart or the head. But it hurt like hell. After Forge, Bishop and Beast read the scrolls on chakra to help Naruto learn, they ventured into making weapons for him to use. Their discoveries led to all new weapons for the X-Men. Naruto, of course, got first dibs on most of them since he had the highest level of chakra out of all the X-Men. After him, Cyclops and Gambit came in a close second in their capacity. Besides the pistol, Naruto also had a chakra-based staff that looked like a foot-long metal cylinder with openings on either end. Ink a double-bladed lightsaber with chakra instead of energy crystals. Naruto also had a black glove on his left hand with a seal design on the back of the hand in silver. Naruto stood now on top of the mansion at the school grounds and looked over the field and said softly to himself. It's funny. I wanted nothing more than to go back and see Gigi all those years ago when he left me here. I thought he abandoned me, but I realized that if he hadn't I would not be who I am today. A new voice called out. The way things are in life are hardly ever as we expect them to be. You know you have to return, but you shouldn't worry. Everyone here knows that no matter what you will always be an X-Man. Naruto smiled. I know, Mom. I just wish things could stay like this forever. But I know now I have to return. I must stop the madness. The pair of arms slipped around him from behind and said, remember, we are waiting for your signal to come. Naruto nodded. I know. The funny thing is, I almost want to tell him thank you. Had he not done what he did, I would never have met any of you. The woman smiled and said true. And then we would never get a chance like we have now. Naruto's eyes glossed over a moment and lightning danced in the bright blue orbs as a bolt of lightning struck a tree at the edge of the grounds. Two men jumped out of the tree and took off running and Naruto let his eyes return to normal. Damn reporters. Why won't they leave me alone? The woman laughed lightly. It's your own fault. You just had to go and save that girl. Naruto chuckled. You're right, but how was I supposed to know she was the president's daughter? The second voice spoke up. Or that she would have made you into a world hero the very next day. That's quite an accomplishment for one such as us, Naruto. You have successfully done something that Charles and I have worked nearly 40 years on. Naruto looked to his right and smiled. Hello Eric, I see you're still doing well. Magneto smiled ruefully. Besides Charles, you're the only one who can call me that and live. How are you, Rogue? Rogue smiled as she held Naruto. I'm just hugging my son while I still can. Magneto nodded. So are you ready? Naruto frowned. Yeah. This is a once-in-a-lifetime shot for us. Cable came from the future and told us that Apocalypse would be dormant for the next 10 years. And he is hiding in my homeworld. I have that long to track him down and then give the coordinates so the Brotherhood and the X-Men can come and help to defeat him once and for all. If we miss this shot, we won't get another for who knows how long. If ever. Thankfully, with a unified world for both human and mutant kind here in this world, we can focus on him. Magneto looked at the sky. You are a very special person, Naruto. You have a natural power in you that makes all of ours look like cheap tricks. You can change people for the better by just being yourself. Naruto smiled and joked. I know, I'm just awesome that way. The response to his jest was a quick slap upside the head from Rogue and he laughed. Sorry Mom. Rogue smiled, ran her hand over his hair gently. So are you ready to go? Naruto nodded, leaning into her touch. No, but I have to. I'm the only one who can get the lay of the land quick enough to find him in time. If we send a larger force to find him, he could have automatic systems that might hide him even harder. Or wake him up so he can go to some other world or time. Rogue hugged him tightly one last time. Go, the others are waiting. Naruto kissed her on the cheek and flew off of the building, landing softly on the ground below. High above, Magneto said to Rouge, he will be alright. After all, he is an Omega-level mutant. Rogue glared. Go before I test out the strength of my fist on your face. Magneto nodded his head in rueful memory of past hits from her. Farewell Naruto. He called as he flew into the air and away from the mansion. Rogue sat down and started to cry softly to herself. Watching as the sun rose in the east, a Cajun-accented voice said, relax Cher, he gonna be fine. She turned and pulled Gambit into a hug. Oh Gambit, I'm going to miss him. After all that we've gone through, I don't want to lose him. Gambit hugged her back tighter. It's gonna to be alright, Cher. He's a good kid. Rogue leaned up and kissed him fiercely on the mouth. I know. I raised him after all. She said smugly. Gambit laughed and smiled. Oh, yes, and you make a fine mother. After this is all over, we can start as a family again. Rogue sighed and smiled. I hope so, Cajun. I truly hope so. Ambit smiled and thought of the blonde boy who just left. You gave her the greatest gift possible, kid. You gave her the ability to touch again when she wants to. Good luck. He held onto Rogue as the sun rose higher into the sky, showing it was going to be a beautiful day despite the grim occasion. When Naruto got to the training floor he saw all the X-men and the students, along with several members of the Brotherhood. They were all waiting for him in a long line, and he smiled as he walked by each one. Every single one of them they patted him on the back or gave him words of thanks or luck. When he got to the end, he saw Professor Xavier sitting in his hover chair, and he said, Naruto, 11 years ago, when we were at our weakest point a beacon of hope appeared in the most unusual way. You were that beacon. You came to our world and with a pure heart and a warrior's spirit, you created a world that all of us are able to finally live in peace with. For this, I want to say thank you. Naruto grinned shyly. Take care of everyone for me, will you? Xavier said of course, Echo or should I say, Naruto Namikaze. Well, I remember when I first came here that I was told our code names were given and only our trusted friends could call us our real names. Naruto said. To me, each of you are not my friends. At this pause, some of the assembled frowners shifted on their feet uneasily. You're my family. And so, with that I say this. Don't forget to wash after every meal and don't forget to turn off the lights. Everyone in the room looked at him in disbelief or blankly before people started to snicker. Then everyone burst out laughing at him for going from a real serious speech to a comic relief joke like that. As everyone tried to control themselves, they looked where Naruto was and the laughter slowly stopped because Naruto was gone. In his place was a poster board with the words in a bubble above it saying hello halahiahu. If you can't figure it out think of an echo, the farther it gets the harder it is to tell what is said. Slowly, everyone left. Each thinking over how the strange boy, now their friend, was gone. And the impact he'd had in their lives. Xavier thought back to a specific day, 2 years ago. Flashback. Suzy K. Bomba, the daughter of the newly elected president of the United States, was at a summer camp for girls when her camp had been taken over by a group of terrorists. They were holding her and the other girls hostage with a new deadly genetically created virus called Silk. It killed within an hour and there was no known cure. Suzy looked at the man who held her captive and he said, now, little girl, your father is going to turn over to us the complete operation manifests of the Sentinel programs. Along with all the blueprints and archived data, or we will kill you and the others here. Suzy sneered at the terrorist. My father will never bow to the likes of you. The man smirked as he stepped back and punched Suzy in the stomach, making her gasp and cough up blood. Yes, he will, or he and everyone else in the world will watch as you slowly die. As the blood bursts from your skin. As it is eaten away from the inside out. He looked at the camera, spoke as if he was talking to the president himself. You have heard my threats and demands, Mr. President. Give us what we want in 2 hours or watch as your daughter dies on national television. 2 hours later the man walked in front of the camera again and spoke almost sadly. Mockingly. You have tried my patience, Mr. President. You could have saved her if you would have just given me the Sentinel program like I asked for. Now this girl will die. He quickly pulled out a needle and stabbed it into Suzy's arm and screamed. Now die, bitch. As calmly as he walked in front of the camera, he began to walk away from the fallen girl. Just then, a boy with blonde hair appeared on the edge of the screen, wearing clothes not typical to a summer camp attendee. Hey, jackass. What the hell do you want the Sentinel program for? The man turned and looked at the boy and said in astonishment. Who the hell are you? Wasn't this a summer camp for girls? Where had this boy come from? The boy said, my name is Echo, and I ask you, what do you want the Sentinel program for? The terrorist frowned. Simple, boy, I plan to use it to wipe out every mutant on the planet. Then I plan on taking over the world since only mutants can stand up to me. Echo tilted his head curiously, the glasses reflecting a warped image of himself back at the terrorist. Then I guess you're too stupid to realize that your plan won't work because you will die here today. The man laughed and said, oh really, and who's going to stop me? You? He questioned as he pulled out a gun and fired a shot at the boy. Echo held up his hand and the bullet stopped in midair. Your gun is useless against me. The man narrowed his eyes. You a mutant? A damned mutant. Echo said, I'm a human, jackass. Mutant or not, I am still human. The man sneered. Well, you can stop bullets, but let's see you handle this. He quickly pulled out a needle and charged at Echo, stabbing him in the chest and smirking at the child. Echo looked at him and lightly touched the needle still jammed into his chest. Is that the same thing you gave the girl just a moment ago? The man laughed evilly. Yeah, you will die shortly, you damn mutant. Echo reached up and pulled out the needle, his gaze moving up and down the syringe. Well, thanks to you, we now have an antidote to the poison. This made the man freeze. What? He said flatly. Echo said, you see, I wasn't born a mutant. Some sick, twisted psycho decided to experiment on a child. He gave me all kinds of powers from different mutants, but one of them is advanced healing. I just need to come in contact with any virus once and my body will create an antibody for it. So now, as soon as I take care of you, then all I have to do is give this girl some of my antibodies and she will be fine. But you know, you can do all you want to me because I don't care since you're an idiot. But if you pick on the helpless like you did this girl here, then I have no choice but to see you pay. I was going to kill you, but I'm not your judge or jury. So I will let the courts take care of you. Until then, you're under citizen's arrest. Echo put his hand on the man and covered him with ice, freezing him in place. Echo walked over to Suzy and untied her quickly from her restraints. Well, let's take care of that virus, shall we? He then reached into a pouch and pulled out a scroll. Unrolling it, he looked it up and down for several moments. Ah, here we go. Thank you Hank McCoy for teaching me chemistry and how to make medicines. He muttered softly as he sent a small chakra burst to the scroll. After a small cloud of smoke appeared, a small chem lab popped out. Echo rapidly began to work, deftly drawing some of his blood out and mixing it with various other ingredients. After about 15 minutes, he smiled and held up a test tube with a clear fluid. Well, here we go. He prepared a syringe with some of the clear liquid and said, if you don't mind, I need to give you this shot, miss, to stop you from dying. Suzy was beginning to feel ill. Her stomach was cramping and she was sweating, but ice cold. How can I trust you? You're a mutant. Echo sighed tiredly. Like I told the idiot over there, I am also human. And I hate to see people suffer when they can be saved. So I leave the choice up to you. You can put away your hate and fear of mutants for 2 whole minutes and allow another human to save your life. Or, you can let all of mankind know that your life could have been saved if you would have just showed a little faith in someone who is different. Suzy looked abashed at that, remembering the lessons her father had tried to teach her about tolerance, sharing, and even acting nice to other people. She looked up at him and said, alright, I trust you. Echo nodded and gave her the shot. Then he turned and made up another needle and capped the rest into the test tube. Well, since you will be fine, would you answer me a question? What made you so special that the idiot behind me thought the President of the United States would give away military information to him? The girl blinked, astonished that he hadn't recognized her. Amazed that he wasn't part of some group hired to protect her. You mean, you don't know who I am? Echo shook his head. Nah, I've been on a camping trip in the woods with a friend of mine for the last 4 months. When I heard gunshots, I just came to investigate. I got here just in time to hear him say that the president could save you if he would have just given him the Sentinel program. The girl snorted and a moment later started to laugh. He thought the president would do it because I'm the president's daughter. Echo blinked and sat back, almost speechless. Well, that's surprising. Since you're the president's daughter, would you mind giving him this? It's the antibodies for whatever the hell he shot you and I up with. My friend is probably worried, so I better get back to my camp. Do you need to call anyone for help or anything? Suzy immediately thought of her father and mother, probably wanting more than anything to hear for themselves that she was okay. Yeah. Echo nodded and pulled out a cell phone and pressed it into her hands gently. Go ahead and keep it. It's prepaid and only has an hour left on it, but that should be enough. The police are probably almost here to get you. He quickly pointed back at the self-named idiot and said, the ice will hold him prisoner for about 24 hours. Kaya. She panicked at the thought of being alone, but called out to him instead. Wait, what's your name? Echo turned and flashed a grin and a small wave. I go by Echo. He said as he left. The Sandame Hokage of Konoha was looking outside his window and thought he will be here soon if they keep their end of the bargain. A voice from behind said you should show more faith in them, Gigi. Startling the third as he turned to look to see who had snuck up on him. The third asked, who are you? The person before him smiled and said, well, you know me as Naruto Namikaze, but I go by Echo now. The third was wide-eyed and said in a shaky voice, is that really you, Naruto? The voice in his head said, can't trust your own eyes, Gigi. Making the third smile and said, so I see you have control over your powers now. Naruto snorts and said, yeah. How have you been? The third said, I missed you. Naruto smiled a small smile and said, well, I'm here for now. The third asked, for now? What do you mean? Naruto said, back in the other world I have people who care for me. I came back here to give my homeworld a chance to prove to me I actually belong here. If I can't, I am going back. I know you're going to say I was born here and my family was from here, but besides you, Gigi, there is no one else right now who I care for in this world. I came here to see you and give this world a chance. The third sighed as he looked down and said, you're right, I suppose. It saddens me to know it, but at least you are honest with me about it and you are also willing to give this world a chance. So what do you plan to do now that you're here? Naruto said, well, I came to be a ninja, however there is a problem we learned about me. Because of the fact I can't move my fingers in most of the shapes that are required for hand signs because of the adamantium to my bones, all the jutsu I can do will have to be seal-less or made of nothing but the few I can do. The third frowned and said that will hurt you. Are you able to do the basic ones I sent you? Naruto said my other powers will let me be just as good. I can use slip to do what you call replacement, but I don't have to grab something to do it. I can move to another spot as long as it is somewhere I have been before or can see. The Henge Jutsu is just like my shape-shift ability so I can look like anyone, and as for the basic Bunshin I can implant a mental image with my mental powers like a Jinjutsu that can't be broken, at least we don't think so, to make it look like I made them. I can use chakra no problem and have decent control I think. I can do that tree climbing and water walking, as well as that leaf balancing exercise. The third nodded and said what about the history and other scrolls? Naruto said I learned them all, so I know the layout of the land and those things. The third said good, how are your fighting abilities? Naruto's eyes glossed over a moment behind his glasses and said I have. The third looked confused and asked what? Naruto said, you just were trying to find out nicely if I have ever killed before, and the answer is yes. The third asked are you reading my mind? Naruto said I can pick up focused surface thoughts like anything you are thinking to yourself. I can't steal information or things like that. I don't do it on purpose. I can't shut it off so sorry if it upsets you. The professor taught me to try and respect people's privacy as much as possible. I'm not as strong using it as the professor is, so he never trained me to enter people's minds other than to implant the idea of illusions in their heads like Jinjutsu, but I am more of a frontline fighter, so illusions are not my real style. The third nods relaxing and said in that case I can understand. I know what happened to you was not your choice, but please try not to read my thoughts if possible. I have many secrets and it is nearly impossible to guard your thoughts. Naruto said I understand. It's one of the powers I have I don't really like to use if I can keep from it. The third nods and said right well you came earlier than I thought you would so you have about a week in the academy left if you would like to learn of you future teammates. I would like to know how strong you are and also about how you were forced to make your first kill. Naruto frowned and said my skills are currently around high chunin to low jounin if I were to guess by your standards. In mutant standards I am an omega level mutant. The third asked what is an omega level mutant Naruto? Naruto said I have the powers of some of the most powerful mutants. I may even be immortal. Shocking the third. The third asked when you say immortal, what exactly do you mean? Naruto said like Apocalypse and possibly Wolverine, I may be unable to die of old age. I can be killed of course, but it will be very very difficult. The third blinked and said I see, keep that info secret between yourself and me. Naruto nods and asks so where am I to stay while I'm here? The third pulled out some keys and said come with me. As they left the office. 10 minutes later the third stopped in front of a two-story home and he said Xavier had a few of the X-Men come here over the last few months secretly and they have built this place for you. Here are the keys. You can explore it later. We need to get you to the academy. Naruto nods and thought so this was the surprise they were talking about. It looks like a mini mansion. I wonder if it has some of the things the real mansion has. Hopefully a danger room. After another 10 minutes Naruto and the third were standing outside of a classroom and the third knocked and waited. The door opened and a man with a scar across his nose gasped and said Hokage-sama, to what do we owe the honor of your visit? As he stepped aside. The third walked in and smiled at the classroom and Naruto stepped in beside him and looked at the teacher in front of him. The third said sorry to interrupt you class Iruka, but I have a new student for you. He has been traveling abroad and has recently returned. Iruka this is. Naruto held out his hand and said the name's Echo. Iruka smiled and said it's nice to meet you Echo. That is an unusual name. The third smiled and said that is a code name he has traveled under, but his real name is classified for certain reasons. Now Echo, this is Iruka and he will be your primary teacher and this man here is his assistant Mizuki. Naruto looked at him and the third heard Jiji, who is Orochimaru. The third eyes widened a moment and thought an S-class criminal of Konoha that was at one time my student. Why? Naruto thought Mizuki just thought how much he can't wait to get out of this village and go to Orochimaru with something called the Forbidden Scroll. As he pulled his hand away from Mizuki. The third narrowed his eyes and thought that's not good, I need to get some proof to arrest him without letting. Naruto said Mizuki I heard of you before. Mizuki blinked and said I hope it was all good. Naruto said well that depends. I mean Orochimaru talked highly of you. Mizuki blinked as he thought how the hell does he know Orochimaru? Shit the third is looking at me now. Better cover it up since he never did trust me after I killed my teammate and asked what are you talking about? In a confused voice. Naruto said Orochimaru told me how proud he was when you killed your teammate. The third eyes went wide and said Mizuki, you have better start explaining. Mizuki was sweating and thought shit, I got to get out of here and get to the Sound Village but Orochimaru wanted the Forbidden Scroll. Damn you kid. Naruto said yeah, Orochimaru was talking about how you were supposed to deliver some scroll to him in the Sound Village after you stole it. What scroll was it again? Mizuki said I don't know what you're talking about. I never agreed to steal the Forbidden Scroll. Naruto smirked and said I never said it was the Forbidden Scroll. Mizuki's eyes went wide, knew he was caught and said you're a lying traitor. I will kill you. As he pulled out a kunai and went to stab Naruto. Naruto held up his hand and the blade in Mizuki's hand stopped and Naruto grabbed Mikuki with his ungloved hand and Mizuki was covered in a block of ice except for his head and he said I'm sure the Hokage here has some questions he would like answered by you. The third said indeed I do. I must thank you for revealing this traitor for me. I had him under watch ever since his teammate was killed on a mission. Now I know it was murder and I will have Ibiki find out as much as he can about Orochimaru. Iruka and the class was stunned and Sasuke said wait, if Mizuki-sensei is a traitor, then wouldn't this Echo guy should also for talking with a criminal like Orochimaru. The third chuckled and said that's just it, Echo has never met Orochimaru since he's been away for so long. He just used the information he was able to get and bluff Mizuki into admitting the truth. I will mark that down as a successful A rank mission Echo. Now I must be going. Anbu, take Mizuki away to Ibiki. As 4 men in mask appeared walked over to Mizuki. Naruto looked at each and heard one in a dog mask, think he looks almost like sensei and like sensei's son would have looked like also. I wish I could have saved him all those years ago when he disappeared. Naruto frowned and said hey you, the one in the dog mask. Stopping the third in the Anbu. The one in the dog mask said it's Inu and yes, what can I do for you? Naruto said just out of curiosity, could you tell me who was your sensei? The third said Echo, I am afraid Inu can't do that. Naruto nods and said okay, I just thought that if this guy sensei is who I think it was, then I might be inclined to become friends with him. After all dogs are faithful. As he turned and walked up the stairs. The third frowned a moment and looked at Inu and then at Echo and said it's your choice Inu. Only reason I even giving the option is Echo is a pretty good judge of character and if he thought he could trust you enough to be friends, then he sees something special in you. Inu frowned a moment and said well it's not that much of a secret and I will be leaving Anbu tomorrow anyways, so why not humor the kid. My sensei was the Yondaime Hokage Minato Namikaze. Echo nods and said so I was right. By the way, that boy that disappeared that day all those years ago was me. Making Inu go wide-eyed a moment behind his mask and looked at the third and asked is it true? Is he who I think he is? The third said yes, but don't use his real name or tell anyone because of where he has been and what he has been trained in. I will explain it to you in private later Inu. Inu nods and looked at Naruto and said I look forward to talking to you sometime Echo-san. Naruto smiled and frowned when he saw the Anbu could not get Mizuki to move in the ice and said hey Anbu, step back away from him a moment. I will free him from the ice. The 3 Anbu looked at Echo and nodded as they stepped back. Naruto walked down the stairs where Mizuki was frozen except his head and he held his hand out to the side and his wrist blade shot out of his hand and he stabbed it into the ice before holding his hand that had the glove on it in the air and snapping his finger and a flame appeared in his hand and Naruto retracted his blade back into his wrist and the ball of fire took the shape of a bird that flew into the air and then toward the hole Naruto had made in the ice and it went inside the ice and exploded blowing most of the ice off of Mizuki. The Anbu grabbed Mizuki who was shaking and holding his hands over his chest, trying to warm up as they glanced at Inu and then at Echo, and left quickly with Mizuki, each trying to figure out what Echo just did. The third smirked as he looked around the class at the shocked students' faces and said try to restrain yourself a little bit Echo. I mean we don't want to scare anyone to death. Echo laughed and said hey, you should see my floor show. Kiba said what the hell was that? You did not use any hand signs and what was that blade that came out of your arm? Echo said all my jutsu or seal less. As for wrist blade, secret. Anyways aren't we supposed to be having class? Iruka coughed and said yes, of course. The third smiled and said when you get settled in Echo, I would like for you to have some tea with me so I can hear more about your training trip. Naruto nods and then felt a chill go down his spine and he did a quick mental scan of everyone in class and said sure, but one question old man. Does this village have fangirls? The third blinked and said I'm afraid so, why? Naruto looked around at the girls in the class and said oh nothing, just wondering how hard it's going to be to lose them. Sasuke said while looking forward it's impossible. Naruto smirked before he shape-shifted into Sasuke and said HMPH. As he appeared beside Sasuke startling everyone as a smoke bomb went off covering both of them. When the smoke cleared Iruka looked at the 2 Uchiha and said Echo, please drop the hinge. Both Naruto and Sasuke raised an eyebrow and looked at each other out of the corner of their eyes and kept quiet. Iruka walked over and hit one of the Sasuke on the head while screaming drop the hench. Sasuke rubbed his head, shot a glare and said, I'm the real Sasuke Iruka-sensei, no wonder I am still here when I should be training to get stronger. Iruka blinked and looked at the Sasuke he hit and then hit the other on the head and Sasuke glared and said, this is a waste of my time. I should be training, not being the brunt of an idiot's jokes. Iruka's sweat dropped as did everyone else in class. The third smiled and thought, so that's why Hess called Echo. Even I can't tell which is the real one. As he walked out of the room. Iruka sighed and said, very well, alright class, today we are reviewing what will be on the final test. As the rest of the day went by too, Sasuke became the talk of class because all the fangirls who had quickly started to fall for Naruto were now focused on Sasuke, thinking he was Naruto. Nobody, not even the most loyal fangirl, could figure out which was which. When the day was done, both left the room and before the fangirls had a chance to see Naruto used slip, the same thing Nightcrawler does, and appeared outside of his new home. Naruto walked inside after unlocking the door and sweat dropped as a human-sized sentinel appeared in front of him and pointed a blaster at Naruto, and Naruto said, you got a problem bub. As he was ready to fight. The sentinel eyes flashed and said, mutant DNA for subject Echo confirmed, security mode is in standby. As it walked out of the room. Naruto thought, okay Bishop, that has to be your doing. As he walked around and found a secret elevator in the same place the one in the mansion was, and he got in it and felt himself going down, and the door opened up, and he walked and said, so, they actually set it up exactly like the command floor in the mansion. Makes things easier for me. As he went to where his room was at the school and smiled as he saw a lot of his stuff had been brought here and thought, how did they do this without me knowing? As he saw some picture and saw one and thought, mom. The next day Naruto got up early and went to the Hokage office and saw the third was in a meeting and stood outside the window and the third said, you can come in Echo. Naruto walked in and the third said, Echo, this is Hada Kakashi. You met him yesterday. He was wearing the Inu mask. Naruto nods and said, hello Kakashi-san. Kakashi nods and said, hello Naruto. Naruto frowned a moment and said, I hope you don't mind me asking, you don't call me that for now around others. I want to forget all about what happened before I was taken away. Kakashi said, that's fine. So, what happened to you? Naruto sat down in a lotus position and held his hand up and a blade around a foot long came out of his skin and said, what didn't happen would be better. Long story short, I was kidnapped and experimented on and had several different people's DNA forced onto me. During it the Kyuubi that was inside of me was killed and my body adapted. As he withdrew the blade. Kakashi looked at Naruto's hand and said, I see. I'm sorry I could not have helped you. Naruto waved his hand and said, don't worry about it. It was actually for the best, I think. Had it not happened, then I would not have met the people I consider family and would not be who I am today. I most likely would have been some stupid idiot who could not shut up. I just then Naruto belt buckle, which was silver with an X on top of it, started to flash and beep and Naruto frowned and hid it and said, Echo here. The voice said, hello Naruto, I was wondering how you like your new home. Naruto said, Bishop, when I see you again I am so going to kick your ass. Do you have any idea what I started to do when I saw a fucking sentinel in my home? Bishop said, probably blow a new hole in the world like you did on Ghost Island. Naruto frowned and said, so what the hell do you want? You never make social calls. Bishop said, the professor wanted me to have you ask your Jiji when the Chunin exams would be. Several of the X-men want to come and see what you have learned while there, as well as see the other reasons. Naruto looked at the third and the third said, around 200 days from now. Bishop said, Roger. I got that. I also wanted to tell you we got the danger room up and running for you, but don't go over alpha level until we can get in and test the omega level safety features. Also you own everything within 1 mile of the house and we also programmed a security system to repair any damage also, so have fun. That's all I called about. Saya. As the X on his buckle stopped glowing. The third said, what is a sentinel? Naruto sighed and said, it's a machine that was designed with the purpose to hunt down and kill mutants. Until about 2 years ago we have had to be prepared for them. The third nodded and Kakashi asked, what's a mutant? The third said, bloodline users. Kakashi nods and asks, so how strong are you? Naruto said, enough. Kakashi nods and said, so you know who your mother is? Naruto said, I know who my adopted mother is and I also know who my father was. Why? The third said, your mother was named Uzumaki Kushina and since you already know your father, I guess it's your choice to tell anyone your name. Naruto nods and said, well I better get going. I got school. As he got up and disappeared using slip, shocking both men. As Naruto was about a block away from the school, he picked up something in his senses and decided to investigate. When he arrived at where he detected something, he saw a brown hair man in his 20s with blue eyes sitting on a tree branch, but the thing is he was wearing one of the newer X-Men outfits that was designed like Naruto's. Naruto said, hello, who are you? The man turned and looked at Naruto and said the name's Reload, you're Echo right? Naruto nods and said I thought I knew all the X-Men. Reload said you do. I came from the future. Naruto frowned and said why? Reload said Apocalypse is here. Naruto went wide-eyed and asked where. Reload said I'm not for sure. I know he is in Konoha though. Naruto sighed and said now that's fucked up. Why the hell did he decide to come here of all the places on the planet? Reload said to study you. From what I was told from the survivors of the battle you will have with him, he wanted to observe you when you returned from the other world. He still considers you a test subject. Naruto walks over and sits down and said well thanks for the info, but what are you doing here on this training ground? Reload said well I decided to wait for you while sending off electrical currents from my communicator, and while I was waiting, I decided to see what that team over there was doing. So far I have to say I am impressed by one of them. Naruto asked really, who? Reload pointed on the other side of the clearing where 3 teens were and he said the girl in the buns. Shess threw 500 weapons since I arrived and Shess hit a perfect bullseye all 500 times. Well I hate to say it, but I need to run. I know you wanted more info, but sadly we don't have it. I just thought I should tell you so that way you know me, since I plan to show up for the battle with Apocalypse, so take care of yourself. Saya. As he disappears in a swirling portal. Naruto sighs and thought damn time travelers. Always fucking with people's lives and every time one shows up from the future, they always bring trouble with them. Just then a kunai came flying toward him, but he looked at it and it stopped moving, and he grabbed it and jumped down and said you know, little girls shouldn't throw pointy objects at people. As he threw the kunai at the girl. The man in green spandex asked who are you and why were you spying on my team? Naruto said the name's Echo. I was just having a chat with a friend who left right before the weapon was thrown, and it just happened to have been on the edge of your training ground. Now since I told you my name shouldn't you honor me with yours? The man in green spandex said oh of course. I am Guy, my adorable student with the fashion sense of youth is Lee, the other male on my team is Niji, and the girl is Tenten. Are you a Konoha shinobi? Naruto said currently no. I am still an academy student. Niji said you look our age so you must be a failure to still be in the academy. With a smug superior voice. Naruto saw a kunai still in the ground and without moving, had it fly and stab Niji in the ass and said as Niji cried out in surprise and pain no, just have not been here to take the actual test. Been away training. Oh and I don't like smartasses either. Everyone looked where the kunai was as Niji pulled it out and said, how dare you attack me? Naruto said really, how did I do that? I never moved or used chakra, so how did I make a kunai that was 30 feet away from me pull itself out of the ground and stab you in the ass? Niji activated his bloodline and said I don't know, but you are the only responsible party since neither of my teammates would dare to attack me. Naruto shrugged and said well you are right, I did do it. I just wanted to see if you could figure out how I did it. Tenten said magnetism. Making everyone look at her. I asked what do you mean Tenten? Tenten threw a senbon at the kunai Niji pulled out and it moved around the kunai in a curve instead of continuing a straight path. Naruto nodded and said good call. Well if you will excuse me I must get to the academy to piss off some more fangirls. By the way, you're welcome. As he walked away. Lee blinked and asked you're welcome for what? As he looked at his teammates and went wide-eyed and said what the? Making everyone turn and look where Lee was. Tenten's sweat dropped and said so that's where all my kunai I lost went. As she looked at nearly 10,000 kunais all stacked together in a pile. I said, a most youthful person. We should shout about his youth. Niji just glared at Naruto walk away. When Iruka got to class he looked at the class and groaned as there were now 2 Shikamaras in class. He sighed and said Echo, can you show your real self and drop the hinge? Both Shikamura stayed sleeping on the desk. Iruka shook his head and took roll call, and when he got to Echo, he just marked him as here giving up on trying to figure out which was which and said alright class, today we will do weapon throwing. One Shikamaru looked up and said define exactly what you mean by weapon throwing. As he changed into Echo. Iruka said I mean throwing shurikens and kunes. Naruto groaned and said that's too damn easy. Can we use other weapons if we want? Iruka said I suppose for extra credit. Now everyone outside. As everyone went outside Naruto saw the Hokage was there with Kakashi, a woman with red eyes and another man who was smoking a cigarette along a man with pale eyes, a blonde hair man, a man who was big boned, a woman with a dog, another man with black hair and looked tired, a man in a long tan coat, and lastly a man with a walking cane and a bandage over his head. Naruto said hey Jiji, what's hangings? Iruka said Echo, show some respect to the Hokage and the other honored guest. Naruto said I show respect only when it had been earned in my eyes. Jiji is probably the only one in this village besides Kakashi that I would give any to at this moment. The third chuckled and said it's alright Iruka, Echo and I are old friends and he has the right to call me that. It's good to see you again Echo. I brought Asuma, Kurenai, and Kakashi here to watch you class do your weapon test today, and they will watch the other test every day this week until the finals to help judge their future teams. The others who are taking teams this year are all out on missions today, but may be here over the next few days. As for the other people here, allow me to introduce from left to right Hiashi, Chauza, Tsume and her companion Kuramaru, Inoichi, Shibi, Shikaku and lastly Danzo. Naruto said well I would say you mostly the parents of the kids in my class, except for the asshole on the end. Making everyone look at him in shock. Danzo sneered, and before he said anything the third said Echo, I may let you slide, but I must ask that you. Naruto pulled his glasses off and looked into the eyes of Danzo said, nothing you will say or do to me, Hokage-sama will ever make me change my view of that man right there. I have seen his work firsthand before I was taken away from this village. Besides you his is the only face I can recall from that time because of how much hate I have for him. I won't attack him as long as he leaves me be, but I will never show an ounce of pity or respect for him, and if he even tries to send his little soldiers that are on the roof of the building behind me and to the right of us with weapons drawn ready to attack, should Danzo order it, I will make what Itachi did to the Uchiha look like a slap on the wrist, but they should look above their heads at this moment because I have enough weapons pointed at their vital organs to kill them in an instant. As the sky began to darken and lightning started to form in Naruto's eyes. The Ashi activated his eyes and gasped and said Hokage-sama, there are approximately 20 root Anbu on the roofs that Echo mentioned, and there are also well over 40 weapons above each one of their heads also. I don't know how Hess doing it either sir, but the storm clouds forming above us are also being controlled by him. As he looked at Naruto. Danzo said you wished to test me boy. Naruto said you tested me already Danzo the day you handed me over to Apocalypse. Nothing in this world would make me happier than to end your life at this moment, but since I am still a civilian should you or your men attack me the law will be on my side to slaughter you and your toy soldiers. With icy tone in his voice. The third said enough. Danzo you are to order your men to stand down, Echo, stop this. I will not have a bloodbath in my village. Naruto said I will stop the moment the men on the roofs are gone. Until then I am defending myself. I just want to know one thing before you run away to piss yourself Danzo, how did you know who I was? Besides the Hokage and Kakashi, nobody in this village even knows what my real name is, and you took one glance at me and knew right away not only who I was, but also what the name of the people I call family go by. Danzo narrowed his eyes and said you can read minds. Naruto said perhaps or am I bluffing? You will have to make your own guess, but you have already proved to the Hokage with your question what I said about you handing me over to Apocalypse was true. The third said Danzo, you are hereby under arrest for restarting Root after I ordered you to disband them and for kidnapping. Danzo said you don't have the authority to arrest me. I am backed by the council. The third said we will see. Kakashi, Asuma, please take him to Ibiki for questioning. Danzo sneered and said, you can't arrest me when you're dead. As he threw his cane on the ground which exploded as yellow and blue smoke came out of it. At that moment around 200 Root members appeared in a circle and Danzo said kill them all. Today is the day I take this gasp off as the color drains from his face as Naruto wrist blade was sticking out of Danzo chest where Danzo heart was and Naruto said that's one, stand down or die. As he looked at the Root members. Everyone was frozen in their spot unable to believe what was going on as well as the fact Naruto just killed Danzo. One Root member started to do hand signs and he took a deep breath and blew out a stream of fire at Naruto and Naruto held up his hand and the fire turned into a dragon which turned in the air and went back and consumed the man who was still breathing fire and Naruto said, that's two, anyone else? As the man's body fell to the ground. One stepped forward and pulled out several kunes and threw them at the group and Naruto looked at the weapons which stopped in their tracks before flying back and embedding in the heart and head of the man who threw them and Naruto said lucky number 3. I can take all of you anytime I want. Stand down and surrender to the Hokage or I will keep killing you. By this time the clan heads had moved to protect their children as Kurenai Asuma and Kakashi began to prepare to defend themselves and the academy students. The third snapped out of his shock of how this event has been going and said that's enough Echo. As Hokage I order you all to surrender. Then men stepped forward all starting to make hand signs and Naruto sighed and said, guess it time to chain them together. As lightning shot out of the sky killing all 10 before they could finish making hand signs. He then flew into the air and he held the hand that was not loved together up and started flying over the top of the Root members, freezing around 40 of them who could not jump out of the way in their spot as the others got out of the way. Naruto then started to use slip and disappear only to reappear behind a member and freeze him or her in place in a matter of seconds. In less than 6 minutes Naruto had captured nearly 100 of them. The others seeing as there was only around 35 plus left quickly started to flee. Naruto sighed as he landed by the Hokage and said sorry. As he passed out. The third caught him and looked around the area and thought he moved nearly at the speed his father's Hiraishin did on the battlefield, and he can freeze someone by holding them for 1 second. He can control fire as well as fly. He also can kill with little to no remorse. What has happened to you, Naruto? As he laid him on the ground slowly. The academy students who had all pretty much thrown up seeing those men die were all shocked seeing this. Kakashi thought thus is the life of a ninja. I don't know what happened to you to turn you like this, Naruto, but for what it's worth, I'm sorry. No one so young should kill like that. Even in hatred. Keiish thought that was unbelievable. He just killed 13 people and caught around 140 in ice. Shibi thought ice, fire, lightning, metal, what else can he control? Tsume thought as she looked at her son Kiba, take a good look Kiba, and remember, that is what a true shinobi is. That same thought went through the Jounins and the other clan heads. On a water tower not too far away a figure stood watching things and thought, so my little prototype. You have grown strong and disposed of the weak, however are you strong enough to be the model for all my soldiers? We shall see, we shall see. Danzo, you served your usefulness until the end. Had the boy not killed you I would have. As he smirked before leaving the area. When Naruto awoke he found himself in the hospital and he looked around and saw Kakashi sitting in a chair and he looked around and asked, so why am I chained to a bed? As he looked at his wrists that were held by chakra binding chains to the bed rail. Kakashi looked up from the book he was reading and said, it was a precaution. The Hokage wanted to make sure you did not try to escape until he had time to talk to you. Naruto nods and extended both his wrist blades which sliced the chains to pieces, making Kakashi raise an eyebrow as Naruto retracted the blades and got out of bed and asked, so where's my necklace? As he looked at the hand that he always kept covered. Kakashi followed his eyes and said, in the closet. The Hokage had them cleaned while the doctors made sure you did not have any wounds. Not prying into Naruto life, waiting for him to tell about it. Naruto saw the look as he got dressed and said, long story short, somebody decided to see how long I could handle being tortured before I would die. I finally got free and killed him and all of the men with him as my first kill. As he pulled the glove over his hand. Kakashi said, everyone has things they don't like to talk about. This is mine. As he raised his headband showing the Sharingan eye and said, my teammate gave it to me the day he died. Naruto nods and said, well, let's get this over with. How long was I out for anyways? Kakashi said, 4 days. Your class already graduated. Naruto smirked and said, so did you find out anything from the guys I captured? Danzo had that set up before you all arrived and he knew who I was also. Somebody had to have told him and I know it's not you or Gigi. Kakashi said as they began going out the window and roof to roof. Ibiki questioned all of them and killed several, but they all say the same thing. Danzo told them to wait for the signal and to kill everyone except him that was there, including the academy students. That's all the intel I have. Naruto nods and said, so why tell me? You could have lied or you could have just told me Gigi told you not to tell. Kakashi smirked and said, let's just say that I think you did the right thing. You tried to stop them and you gave them all warnings which they ignored. You also only killed those who tried to attack first and captured the others. Even when you were pissed you still showed good judgment. Naruto said, you just got off on the idea of seeing Danzo get his. Kakashi laughed and said, am I that easy to read? Naruto said nothing as they landed on the edge of the Hokage window and stepped inside and saw the third doing paperwork and he looked up and said, hello Naruto. How are you feeling? Naruto said, fine. In a dead voice. The third said, well, I want to say that I am both pleased and disappointed in your actions the other day, Naruto. I am pleased that you dealt with the threat to the village in a pretty favorable position, but I am all disappointed you did not tell me of Danzo's involvement in your kidnapping. Naruto said, sir, I had honestly expected him to be long dead since the last time I saw him was when Apocalypse punched him through the stomach with his fist, so I had thought with him dead, I had no reason to tell and bring up bad memories. Then when I saw him I looked at him and picked up on his thoughts, and the more I heard the more hate I had for him, and so when it came to me showing him respect, I had rather slit my own throat than to give him any. The third frowned and said, very well, but next time if you see anyone who you know who worked with Apocalypse or any other threats to this village, you are to inform me before taking actions. As it stands now you were acting as a civilian and did what you felt was for your own safety, and that is what I have passed on to the general population. As for the council, that's another story. They want to know the truth about your powers and your claims. I told them I would talk to you and have you decide what to do. If you refuse to tell them they are going to request for you to leave the village because they do not want a mental case in the village if they can stop it. We already had one and we don't want another. Naruto frowned and said, if I tell them what then? The third said, you will be placed on a team under probation until you are fully deemed not a threat to the safety of the village. I'm sorry but you showed skills and powers that are beyond what we would expect of one as young as you, and the fact you can kill without remorse is something that bothers them and myself. Naruto said, fine, but only those who actually saw me fight. I don't want to deal with the other council members if I can. I hate politics. The third frowned and said I'm afraid there are no other council members. When Danzo ordered the attack he also had his men attack the council and killed everyone there including both my advisors, so as it stand the clan heads who were there with us is all that is left of the council. Naruto said very well. Tomorrow, 7 AM, my place. I can explain everything then and there. The third nods and said one more thing Naruto, until this matter is taken care of you are to have your own guard follow you to make sure you do not cause any more trouble or flee. I have assigned Kakashi to you since you deemed him worthy to know of you. Naruto nods and said well I guess that's it. I will see you tomorrow Jiji. As he placed his hand on Kakashi's shoulder and both disappeared using slip. Naruto and Kakashi appeared outside the house and Naruto said listen, I have a pretty advanced security system, so if you don't want to be killed do as I tell you when we go inside. As he opened the door and both Kakashi and Naruto walked in. When the door closed 3 sentinels appeared and one said mutant DNA confirmed, subject known as Echo confirmed. One unidentified person also confirmed. State your purpose here or be destroyed. As they all turned their weapons on Kakashi. Naruto said security acknowledge voice recognition Echo. One said voice recognition confirmed subject Echo. Naruto said identify subject as guess level A for unknown subject. And then looked at Kakashi and said state your name, any nicknames you have as well as current rank or political station. Don't lie or they will kill you. Kakashi nods and said Hada Kakashi, codename Inu, also known as Sharingan Kakashi, current rank Jounin Elite. One sentinel said identity confirmed welcome Kakashi, please be advised you are restricted to only level A areas. Good day. As all 3 sentinels moved back into hidden panels in the wall that covered over where they were hid. Naruto said okay, follow me and I will show you around. As he led Kakashi toward a stairs that went upstairs and Naruto said upstairs is the general guest bedrooms. If we were in the original mansion back where I came from then all the students would be sleeping up there. This floor is mostly recreational level and administrative rooms. Since it's just me I don't use them unless I have company over. Now follow me so I can show you the X level. As Naruto turned and walked to a statue and created a rose out of ice and put it into a flower vase with several fake roses in it and a door opened up and Naruto stepped in and said come on. As Kakashi slowly followed. The door closed and Kakashi asked what is this? Naruto said it's an elevator. It moves you up and down from different floors. We are going underground right now though. Kakashi frowns and thinks the Hokage never said anything about an underground complex. I wonder if he knows. Kakashi asked that rose deal you did back there. What was it for? Naruto said it's part of the security for the elevator. It is a certain height and weight and shape and a scanner is built into the vase so it can tell if it was made by me. If it is off by one petal then knockout gas will fill the entire hall and lock down the entire house. The only way to escape then is if I gave the access code. Kakashi went wide-eyed and thought damn, that would stop anyone then, since you would have to get it right on the very first try. Not even I can copy exact weights, size and shape on one try even with my Sharingan if I could use ice with no jutsu also. Naruto smiled to himself as the door opened up and Naruto started to walk and said as you can see, all the rooms have a sign on each door and this place is fully automatic. No Jinjutsu, Ninjutsu or Bloodline can fool these sensors so they can tell you're here at any moment. Go ahead and try to go in any door. Kakashi nods and walked to a door and noticed no handles and he asked, where are the handles? Naruto said step back a moment. Kakashi did and Naruto walked to the door and it opened and Naruto said this is the medical bay, it is an X level security room. I only gave you A level access so any door that opens for you is one you can go in. Any that don't you can't get into and don't try to pry them open or 20,000 volts of electricity will kill you. Kakashi paled and Naruto stepped back and said now I gave you access to the lounge, sleeping area, kitchen, and well that room I will have to restrict. Don't want you killing yourself in there. Kakashi sweat drops and said is there anything in here that won't kill me? Naruto said we have a lot of secrets that we want to protect. These security systems has saved mine and the others lived several times so I don't kid around about them. Now the room I was saying I need to keep you out of is the danger room. Is basically a training area but the problem is if you do not set it up right or accidentally remove the safety features it will kill you. That is why I don't want you in there. Now go ahead and look around why I changed that security clearance. As he walked away. Kakashi looked around and saw signs written in several languages but he could only read one. He read med bay, war room, library, hangar, cerebro, lounge, kitchen, danger room, lab A, lab B, holding cells, storeroom, armory, sleeping area. He frowned and thought this is basically one big military complex. Nothing I was told before gave me any notice of this. The Hokage must not know because some of this he would have mentioned. I must inform him. As he saw Naruto coming back. Naruto said, so any questions? Kakashi asked, why exactly does this place give off a military base feeling? Naruto sighed and leaned against a wall and said, follow me. As he pushed off and walked toward the room that said danger room. Kakashi followed him and looked around as he saw several machines, and Naruto said, have a seat and watch through the window while I load something to show you why it's this way. Kakashi nods, looking out the window, and saw a large white room. Naruto started pushing buttons, and the white room changed to look like houses and roads, trees, and then people walking around. Kakashi looked at it, and Naruto said, this is what some of the villages where I was looked like. Now most of those people down there are normal citizens, but a few of them are mutants, or as you call them, bloodline users. Now watch what we had to deal with until recently. As suddenly 4 50-foot-tall metal human machine flew into the air in the room. One of the machines said mutant DNA detected. Begin eradication procedures. As they all ended, and several small children curled up in fetal positions, scared, and a woman got in front of them, and her skin turned white as she stuck her hands out and started shooting snow blast at the machines. The machine it hit was covered in ice, while the other 3 raised their hands and red energy shot out of the hands, hitting the woman and children, and all that was left behind were smoking corpses. The machine said mutant eradicated, continue searching area. As they flew into the area, and the one who was covered in ice started to glow as the ice melt, and then it flew away. Naruto closed his eyes and cancelled the program and said, those were standard sentinels. I have personally destroyed nearly 2,000 of them in my life. People fear what they don't understand or what is different, so they created them. The ones upstairs are actually a more advanced ones that came out about 4 years back. If anyways, the governments of the world where we were at used them to either enslave, imprison, or destroy anyone with any mutant DNA. People like my friends, the Morlocks, who most don't even have any powers or special abilities, are still classified as mutants because they just look different. They have to live in the sewers away from the normal people, so they are not beat or killed. It's just not the Sentinels either. There are humans like the purist groups who believe anyone who is a mutant should be killed at birth, and then there are even those who are mutants like Apocalypse who don't actually care about the other mutants. They care about their own agendas. Kakashi looked down and said, sound like the land of Wave. They hate bloodline users there, and they have a civil war that has lasted nearly 100 years. So you and the others who you call friends did what exactly? Naruto said, we worked on creating a world where both humans and mutants can live in peace and harmony. Up until 2 years ago it was a dream, but by dumb luck and chance a mutant saved the daughter of one of the leaders of the strongest government of the world. By doing so the views on mutants as a whole was changed. There are still those who don't trust mutants or like them, but their numbers dwindle more and more each day. Now to answer your question about what we do if we got word of something like the Sentinels or chemical weapons that kill mutants, hurt relations with humans and mutants, or those like Apocalypse, we would go and fight them while protecting the innocents. Kakashi said, sounds like you played superheroes. Naruto snickered and said, nah, that's Spider-Man's racket. I don't like the tights. Kakashi looked confused, so Naruto typed something and the room changed to a skyscraper, and Kakashi saw some guy in orange sticking on the side of the building, and the guy said, my spidey sense is tingling. As he stuck out his hand and web shot out and he leaped away. Kakashi tried to hold it in but burst out laughing, and Naruto said, exactly, Hess, one of the more publicly known mutants. The X-Men mostly stayed in the background, we weren't in it for the publicity or the fame. We did it because it was what was right. Kakashi smiled behind his back and said, the X-Men, was that the name of the group you belonged to? Naruto said, yeah, they were the ones who saved me from Apocalypse and also the ones who trained me along with the Brotherhood. I am actually one of the few who both groups recognize as a member of their group. Kakashi asked, who are the Brotherhood? Naruto said, they were like the X-Men in their general ideas, but they were willing to go about it differently than the X-Men were. The X-Men tried not to kill humans and let the laws handle them, while the Brotherhood would sometimes take justice in their own hands. Kakashi nods and asks, so who is this Apocalypse guy you keep talking about? Naruto frowned and typed something on the computer, and a tall man with blue armor and a palish-looking skin appeared, and Naruto said, Apocalypse, he is one of, if not the oldest and most powerful mutants ever. He is well over 5,000 years old. He is basically immortal. He believes that only the strong should survive and that he should decide who is strong and who is not. He was the one who created the Kyuubi no Kitsune and sent it here. Kakashi went wide-eyed and said, are you sure? Naruto nods and said, yes, when the X-Men came and rescued me along with a few others that Apocalypse had kidnapped, they were able to get a lot of info from his archives, and he bragged to himself in his archives about how he sent the Kyuubi here so that way he would be sealed into a child who would get the healing power of the Kyuubi and become a perfect test subject. Me. The Hokage has seen some of the info and videos of it but not all. Anyways, Apocalypse then had Danzo capture me when I was 3 and over the next years took mutant DNA and fused it in my body and some of them got rejected but several of them actually succeeded in being absorbed by me. The process wound up killing the Kyuubi that was in me. That is why I have all these powers now. Now it could have had its drawbacks like with my skeletal system that was bonded with metal, it could have made it where I would never have grown any taller than I was at that age, but the metal actually mutated itself along with my body and my bones, instead of being grafted with the metal, actually became the metal and grew with me. The blades that shoot out of my wrist were designed that way, while the bonding was done in the shape of a sword blade. Anyways, the day I was saved from Apocalypse was the day that demon child, as this village called it, died. I am all that is left. It's because of the DNA I was forced to take. Now is that enough info for you and the council, Gigi, or do you need more? As he looked up at the sky. Kakashi asked, what are you talking about, Naruto? Naruto said, as the Hokage already knows, one of my powers allows me limited mental abilities where I can read surface thoughts. I usually have to be within so many feet of a person to do it since my powers are weaker than the originals and it uses my chakra to use them, but when he zoomed in with whatever it is he is using, I could pick up his and the others' thoughts briefly. Now I am hungry and could use a beer, so let's go get something to eat, Kakashi. As he stood up and placed his hand on Kakashi's shoulder and both left using slip to appear outside of the house. Naruto asked, know any good places to eat with good food and alcohol, and don't you dare start preaching to me about being too young. I have drunk since I was 11. Kakashi said, yeah, I know a place. As he started to lead them away. In the Hokage office, the third frowned and asked, so are you all satisfied now? Each of the clan heads looked at each other and Hiashi said, I still have reservations about trusting him. He seems to care more about these X-men than he does the village and I still have trouble believing some of it. The third said, I would hope he does care more about them. After all, they treated him better than we ever did and they actually took the time to help him when he needed it. Inoichi asked, what is the extent of his mental powers, sir? The third said, it seems to be about 20 feet and he can only hear the surface thoughts in your head, so say you were talking to your consciences, then he would hear those thoughts, but not anything else. That was why when Mizuki mentioned Orochimaru he asked me who he was in my mind and then helped to prove Mizuki was a spy. Inoichi nods and said, that would be good for interrogation if careful, but if word got out how it worked, then it could be used against him. The third nods and said, I know, I have already figured out how to block him also. Jiaozu asked how. The third said, you all know the simple medical technique to get rid of hangovers where you channel chakra to your temples. I do that whenever I have something I don't want him to hear and it blocks him out. I already tested it fully with several of my Anbu by having them do it while thinking they were going to attack him while he never noticed. Hiashi nods and said, well, that's good. What about his other powers? The third said, well, the gloved hand allows him to manipulate fire while the ungloved hand allows him to use ice. The blade that he can shoot out of his hands is of a metal that can cut diamonds and was grafted onto his entire bone structure, making it impossible to break. He also has the ability of magnetism where he can move metal or stop metal and fly by moving the metal in his body. How much control he has I do not know. He still has the healing ability he had as an infant and has decent chakra control, but he also cannot make hand signs to perform jutsu, so any he learns will have to be seal-less. Shibi asked, why is that, sir? The third frowned and said, I don't know how it happened, but the hand that is gloved is that way, not for some kind of attack or anything like that. It's to keep the secret that all the flesh, muscles, chakra canals and veins on his hand have been completely destroyed, leaving behind the metal skeleton hand from the wrist to his fingers. I figure the only reason he can even use the hand is because of the advanced technology and seals in that glove. Making everyone gasp hearing about the hand. Zoom said, well, I don't have any trouble with him being a ninja of the village, but I don't want him on my son's team. He can still be friends with him, but as it is now he is too powerful and Kiba would take offense to it and become aggressive and stupid to show him up. It is nothing against the Seko kid. The third said, I am well aware of that. Do any of you have a problem with him being friends with you children? The Ashi said, I do, only because he has already attacked my nephew. His views of respect giving would be frowned by my clan and I am afraid if Hinata were to become friends with him, my council would brand her with a seal. Were it not for that I would not have any issues. The third said, so if say they had to team up together for a mission you would not object. The Ashi said, no sir, it just would have to be kept official only though. The third nods and said, I agree and had already expected that. Does anyone object to Thayer children becoming friends with him should they chose to besides Hiashi? None of them objected and the third said, well then it seems that now I just have to figure out where to put him. After several minutes of discussion and thought the teams were designed and the third sighed and said, I think this smaller council is better than the big one as we were actually able to get something done. I will put the teams in effect when the teams are announced tomorrow. Thank you all for your help with this as well as your understanding. Each of them nodded and leave, and the third shook his head agent and thought I hope Naruto does not kill me for doing this with the teams. I had to consider others as well as him. As he pulls out his Icha Paradise book and reads it. Naruto was walking down the street with Kakashi when he looks at the Hokage Tower and frowns with narrowed eyes and thought I hate being here. Everyone already is treating me different and it won't be long before the hate starts. I want to go home, but I promised to stay here for at least a year or until Apocalypse was taken care of. Kakashi saw Naruto stop and look at the Hokage Tower and asked is everything alright? Naruto said yeah, just thinking for a moment. So where is this bar and grill you were telling me about? Kakashi said actually right over there. Come on, let's eat. As he walked in. Naruto said can you pay for mine? I haven't been paid for Mizuki yet and my regular money is not used here. I will pay you back once I get paid. Kakashi said sure, no problem. As they walked in and Kakashi heard a voice said hey Kakashi, what are you doing here? Kakashi turned and saw Asuma sitting at a table with Kurenai and said, the Hokage has me guarding Echo here in case any of the remainder of Root try and kill him for taking out Danzo since he only got out of the hospital today and might not be up to full strength yet. Asuma nods and said so how's it hanging kid? Kurenai took a sip of her wine and Naruto said swinging low, standing tall and leaning to the right. Causing Kurenai to spit her wine out and blush on her face as both Asuma and Kakashi snickered at that. Kurenai turned her eyes at Naruto and said pervert. Naruto said, how would you know what I was referring to unless your mind was also a pervert Kurenai? I could have been talking about my arm or anything else you pervert. Kurenai turned red and said whatever. And Kakashi went wide-eyed and said I don't believe it, someone actually got Kurenai back for all those pervert comments. Asuma said so what you guys doing here? Naruto said I need something to eat and drink. Where's the bar? Kakashi said over there. Pointing toward the left. Naruto nods and walks over and Kurenai said isn't he a little young to drink? Just then they heard a shout say, what the hell do you mean the hardest shit you got is sake, that shit tastes like piss water, I want something with a kick to it. The man behind the counter said sorry kid, but we don't have anything other than sake here. Naruto turned and said hey Kakashi, be right back. As he disappeared using slip. Kakashi was about to go after him when Naruto returned with a milk crate with several bottles in it and Naruto said, just bring me my order to the table over here. I got my own booze. As he walked over and said so where do you want to sit? Kakashi looked at the crate in Naruto's hand and said what's that? Naruto smiled and said my mom's secret recipe, it goes by many names like moonshine and white lightning. I just call it homebrew. So where do you want to sit? Kakashi looked at Asuma who nods and Asuma said, you can sit here. Naruto nods and sets the crate down and grabs a bottle putting it to his teeth and pulls out a wooden cork and sets it on the table before gulping down a fifth of the bottle before setting it down and going ah. As he smiled. Asuma asked so what's it made of? Naruto said a little of this, a little of that. My mom taught it to me when I was 8 and I've brewed my own since then. Want some? Guaranteed to make you go blind, grow hair on you ass, and forget the last 20 years of your life. Asuma chuckled and said sure kid, why not? Let's see if this stuff is as good as you brag. As Naruto hands him a bottle from the crate he had. Asuma pours him and Kurenai both some and then hands the bottle to Kakashi who poured a little and Naruto grabbed his bottle and said cheers. As they all to a drink. Kakashi and Asuma coughed while Kurenai's eyes started to gloss over. Naruto frowned and said damn lightweights. Inoichi walked in with Chaozu and Shikaku and saw Naruto and the others and Naruto waved and said yo, want to join us? These three are already pretty much wasted after one sip. Kakashi said I am not. As he took a swig down from the bottle and fell backwards passed out and Naruto grabbed the bottle before he fell and said you got drunk under the table after 2 shots. Kurenai started to wave her hand in front of her face and asked, is it me or is it hot in here? Naruto said it's you. Asuma said damn, how strong is that stuff? Naruto said 90 proof. Making the 3 clan heads look at the Jounins who seemed to be drunk. Asuma said I believe it, want to get out of here to cool down. As he looked at Kurenai. Kurenai said sure. As she had already loosened her battle dress a little to try and cool down. As they both left Naruto saw his food arrive and said good, I was getting hungry. So want to join me? As he motioned to the now empty seats. Inoichi said no, that's alright, we got some drinking to do. Naruto said ah, a man after my own heart. Want some of my booze? Inoichi said no, we like our own safe drinks. Don't want to become like Kakashi down there. As he saw Kakashi with a shit-eating grin on his face that was so big that could be seen behind his mask. Naruto nods and said to each his own. As he took a swig and began to eat. He was about halfway through when he heard a voice say, and the flames of youth shall show all the way to enlightenment. As Naruto looked toward the door and saw a guy walk in with his team, and Naruto smiled a moment and took another swig. I was looking around the table to find an empty seat when he saw Kakashi on the floor and he ran over to check on him and asked what has happened to my most youthful rival. Naruto said he got drunk and left me with no company, want to join me. I looked and said Ayako-san, how are you this day? Neji shot Naruto a glare and Naruto said pretty good I guess, just got out of the hospital earlier today. I said yes, I heard about that, you passed out from chakra exhaustion after fighting those root. Neji said I heard you killed 60 of them. Naruto said no, I think it was around 15 including Danzo, the rest I captured. Lee said you flames of youth burn brightly Echo-san, I must stroke my flames of youth to become as bright as yours or I will run around Konoha 10 times on my hands and if I cannot do that then I will headbutt a log 1000 times and if I cannot do that then he stopped when Naruto shoved a full bottle in Lee's hand and said shut up and drink. Tenten snickered at the dumbstruck look on Lee's face and Naruto said so care to join me. I said sure, it would be most unyouthful to leave someone alone when they want company. I shall give you company and show up my eternal rival. Come team and sit. As he sat down and nodded to the owner and said the usual. The owner nods and goes into the kitchen. Naruto said so what have you four been up to? Lee uncorked the bottle and looked at it and asked what is this? Naruto said with an accent a little something my mama taught me, makes you feel 10 foot tall and bulletproof. Give it a try. I said so what was Kakashi doing here with you? Naruto said making sure I stayed out of trouble. Good luck there. As he took a swig. Neji was glaring at Naruto when a voice said what's up buddy and everyone looked at Lee who was buzzed and Naruto said well hess happy. Lee looked at Neji and said piss off bug-eyed freak. In a drunk voice shocking everyone. Neji stood up to take Lee's bottle away saying you're drunk and a disgrace dead last. Lee said what's you say asshole. Ina grabbed his bottle guzzled some more and disappeared with speed that shocked everyone including Naruto and punched Neji in the face, sending him flying out of the bar. I got up and tried to grab Lee when Lee leaned back and kicked Guy in the chin, sending him outside also. Naruto slapped his head and said a damn drunken master. Tenten jumped back after seeing both her teammates get attacked and asked what's wrong with you Lee. Lee said nothing wrong Bunbun. As he took another swig of the moonshine. Tenten looked at Naruto and said hey, aren't you going to stop him? Naruto looked at her and said nope. Nothing I can do until he sobers up which won't be for a while. Just leave him alone and he will leave you alone. Tenten looked unsure and asked are you sure? Naruto said trust me, the only problem with fighting a drunken master is you leave him and his booze alone and he's fine, but mess with either and you get your ass kicked. Trust me, I got scars to prove it. Just then Guy came running in with Neji who both tried to stop Lee only for Lee to dodge every strike and send all three of them outside in a leaping kick before he laid down on the ground almost asleep. I got up and went to check on Lee, but Lee rolled to the side each time he tried to touch him and then kicked Guy in the chin and said see I fooled you. Haha. The shout of Neji Nison, what happened? And everyone saw Hinata run over to check on Neji who was rubbing his jaw. Neji spat out leave me alone. As he stood up. Lee heard Neji and said be nice asshole. As he sent a flying kick at Neji who flipped several times after being hit and landed passed out with his feet over his head and looked like he was kissing his own ass. Just then a messenger hawk that was flying over took a moment to relieve itself and fell on Neji pants. Sasuke who was running away from Ino and Sakura saw Lee fighting Guy and Neji and saw they had headbands except for Lee and thought he must be a missing nin or an enemy. Now's my chance to test my strength to defeat him. As he charged Lee. Lee stood in front of Hinata and said in a drunken speech hey pretty lady, you have the same bug eyes as that jerk, but yours are prettier, want to go out with me? I will protect you with my life. Only to backflip grab Sasuke punch, pulling Sasuke arm out of socket and sending a flying dropkick from his flip into Sasuke back, sending him away only for his bandages to grab Sasuke and pull him back with them and punch Sasuke out and sending him toward Neji flying where they both flipped over several times, this time with Sasuke who had his feet over his head and Neji was slumped over him where their faces looked like they were kissing, but you could not tell because of Neji hair in the way. They fell also in a more questionable position where their hips met each other and a white stain on both boys' pants. That was more than Tenten could take as she burst out laughing at the sight of Neji and Sasuke. Lee landed and looked like he was going to sleep agent and he grabbed his bottle and drank the last of it. The branch member who was guarding Hinata ran over to check on Neji but stopped when Lee grabbed Hinata's hand and said, will you marry me pretty bug-eyed girl? Hinata blushed and passed out and Lee caught her and the branch member said release her or I will kill you. I must take Hinata-sama back home. Lee said home. In a questionable voice before he took off leaving a dust trail. Naruto smiled and said as the Hyuga started to chase Lee so, what have you been up to? Tenten's food arrived and she said training and missions. You. Naruto took a sip of his drink and said killin' and chillin'. Here allow me. As he grabbed her glass of water and had frost appear on it chilling the water. Tenten looked surprised and Naruto said so what's Konoha like normally? As he took a bite to eat. Tenten looked at him and said Konoha is well Konoha. Naruto snickered and said I mean what do people do here for fun or to relax, things like that. I've been gone since I was 3 and only got back the day before I met your team, so I don't really know much about it. Tenten seemed in thought and said well there are parks to relax in, several book and music stores, though not much selection for music and most books are adult rated. There is a few restaurants and training grounds. Hot springs, and that's about it. People around here mostly just talk to their friends and gossip and stuff like that. Why? Naruto frowned and slammed his head into the table and said, I am so going to die of boredom here, tell me, are there any interesting places for people to go outside of the village? Tenten said I don't really know. All our missions have been to small farming towns or patrols in the woods that are outside of the village missions. Guy-sensei had been keeping us close to Konoha to train before going on harder missions, sorry. Naruto waved his hand and said it's alright, it's not your fault. Tell you what, since you've been kind enough to talk to me why don't I pay for your meal? Tenten said sure, why not? Naruto nods and walks over to the drunk Kakashi and pats several pockets before finding his wallet and he pulled it out and grabbed some money and Tenten asked what are you doing? Naruto said I got an A rank mission pay coming from the Hokage for capturing a traitor and the money I have from where I have been at all this time is not recognized by Konoha, so Kakashi here said he would spot me the money and I pay him back out of my mission pay. Don't worry I am including the receipt in his wallet and a note telling him what I did. As he walked over and paid for both meals and then put the receipt and the note in Kakashi wallet. Naruto frowned and said you would not mind helping me get him back to my place would you? I don't think it's a good idea for someone to leave their guard behind. Tenten sighed and said alright Blondie, but you owe me, you got to tell me about yourself. As she helped Naruto pick up Kakashi and they started to drag him toward Naruto place. Naruto asked so what do you want to know? Tenten narrowed her lips and asked is Echo your real name? Naruto said no, it's my code name. Tenten asked why do you need a code name? Naruto said the same reason Anbu do, it's to keep my friends and family safe from my enemies. Tenten asked what's your family like? Naruto said my birth mother and father both passed away the day I was born. My adopted mother is cool, she acts like a big sister sometimes and others she acts like my boss. She tries to keep me safe when she can, but there are times she lets me do things she knows are dangerous because they have to be done. I love her very much. I have others I consider family because we have been friends since I was 4 and they helped to raise and train me after they saved me. What about you? Tenten frowned and said my mother passed away during the Kyuubi attack and my father left me to the orphanage after the attack and I never knew who either of them were. I grew up alone and was never adopted. I work part-time at a weapon shop across town since I became a genin so I can get my supplies at a discount. I get an allowance from the village every month and it pays for most of my needs, but I have to be careful with it. Naruto nods and said I know how that feels also, hell we may have been in the orphanage together as children. Tenten said, but you were adopted. Naruto frowned and said no, I was kidnapped. Danzo kidnapped me and sold me to a man who used me as a lab rat for a year until the people I call family now busted up his operation and rescued me in the process. Tenten frowned and said sorry, I just thought you were one of the lucky ones who got adopted when you said you had a family. Naruto said it's okay, I can understand. Had I not have been kidnapped I would most likely have died on the streets anyways, so at least I got lucky in that regard. Just then a beeping noise was heard and Naruto groaned and said Tenten, this is hard to say, but can you slap my belt buckle for me? Tenten blushed and asked why. Naruto said I got a radio built into my belt buckle and someone is trying to call me on it right now, but I have to hit it to talk to them and Tenten leaned over and slapped it. The female voice said come on Echo and answer. Naruto smiled and said what's up doc? How's things with you Phoenix? Jean voice said finally, we have been trying to get a hold of you for the last couple of days, where have you been? Naruto said I ran out of chakra again. Long story short I had a mini geonosis. Jean's voice was quiet for a moment and she said I see, everything okay? Naruto glanced around and said the usual, glares and whispers. As he saw several people look at him scared. Tenten frowned when she heard this and looked around and saw what he was talking about. Jean's voice said well try and stay out of trouble. Anyways I just wanted to call you and tell you your mother said you need to try and find a date for the wedding. It's in less than 4 months. Also your fangirl is trying to find you and Jubilee is ready to give her the Elvira look. Naruto muttered wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Jean asked what was that? Naruto said nothing, hey is Cable around? Jean frowned and asked why. Naruto said I think I might have ran into one of his old running buddies the other day, goes by the name Reload, claimed to be from the same area Cable's from, and I thought he might know him and could tell me how reliable a guy he is. He claimed my old childhood friend that I wanted to find while here was in Konoha, but I don't really believe him. Jean said understood, I will try and get a hold of Cable and find out, be careful kid and don't do something stupid. You know how bad Rogue can get when you do. Naruto said Roger and thanks Phoenix, tell everyone I miss them and stay cool, Echo out. Naruto had a kunai fly out of Tenten's weapon pouch and slam against the buckle, and it stopped glowing, and it floated back to Tenten's pouch, and Naruto said thanks. Tenten asked who was that. Naruto said she basically an aunt to me as well as my primary doctor. Tenten nods and asked what wedding. Naruto smiled and said my mom, Shess marrying the guy Shess been dating for around as long as I known her. They had a rough start back then, but now they mellowed out and are settling down. Tenten said that's cool, how old are they? Naruto said mom just turned 31 last month and Gambit's 33. Tenten said your mom's Rogue. Naruto nods and said well here we are, want to come in? I promise I won't bite. Tenten said nah, not today, I need to go check up on my teammates and sensei. It was nice talking to you. Naruto said it was nice talking to you also Cash. Tenten blinked and asked what? Naruto said sorry, it's just since the other day when I saw all those weapons you had it reminded me of a weapons cache where they store a lot of weapons for later use. I thought it would be a cool nickname for you. Tenten said no it's alright, it's just no one's ever gave me a nickname before besides my boss at the weapons store and it's mostly a joke for him to help improve business. He calls me the weapon mistress of Konoha, but I actually want to be that so I can show everyone I can be just as good as anyone else male or female, like my idol Tsunade of the Sanins. Naruto said that's a good dream to have, but it's not the only reason is it? Tenten asked what do you mean? Naruto said sorry if I am wrong, but I think you're trying to prove that you're someone special also for the memory of your parents. That's also a good reason to have but slap across his face as Tenten stomped away. Naruto sighed and dropped Kakashi and said you better tell her someday asshole or I will. She deserves to know the truth. As he walked inside slamming the door. Kakashi slowly rubbed his head and looked where Tenten walked away and sighed as he got up and walked inside. He found Naruto waiting by the flower vase where he had put the rose at and said, do you have any signature moves or something no one else knows or something of value that there are no copies of or can be produced that you can make at any time? Kakashi thought and said yes, why? Naruto walked over to a small table and said what is it? Kakashi opened up his Icha Paradise book and pulled out a picture and Naruto saw it and sighed and said, I will think of something later. As he kicked the table leg bending it and then used his magnetism to repair it and the door to the elevator opened. Naruto stepped in and leaned against the walls and Kakashi walked in and they rode the elevator in silence until the doors opened and Naruto asked so you want to talk about it? Kakashi frowned and said my teammate Rin were the only survivors of a mission that killed out other teammate. It's where I got this eye. We gave each other emotional support and things were rough and rocky always with missions, the war and other things. It was that way until she became pregnant. Since she was not married to me at the time her clan disowned her and chose her sister as the heir to the clan. Her only possession she had was her clan summoning scroll. Your father helped us out and then our daughter was born about 2 weeks before the Kyuubi attack. I was away on a mission at the time and Rin started to have complications. By the time I returned to Konoha 10 days later she was dead and our daughter was being taken care of by your father. I had only got to hold her for a day when word came of the Kyuubi coming. Being in Anbu at the time I was sent with the team to slow it down. Everything after that was a blur until your father was dead and you had Kyuubi sealed in you. My family home was destroyed by Kyuubi, along with your family home and several others. With Rin's death, your mother and father's death and all weakening of our forces, I made the hardest choice of my life, I put her up for adoption. The only one who knows is the Hokage. The money she gets every month is from me. Naruto sighed and said so why don't you tell her? Kakashi said I can't, every time I look at her I see my own failure as her father and to her mother. I am no father, I am a terrible model for one. Everyone I care for has died and every time someone of importance comes into my life they get caught up in my problems. I can't do that to her. At least this way she thinks I might have died in battle or on a mission or something, instead of abandoning her. Naruto sighed and said fine, it's your life, but I think you're making a mistake. As he walked into his room and shut the door. Kakashi sighed and went to the room he had chosen earlier and went to sleep over the hangover he felt coming. Naruto sighed as he was finishing capturing Tora and returning her to the Hokage office. Tora was currently in a ball of ice with several sheets of metal forming a black pot floating in air around it with flames underneath it and little demons made out of fire circling the pot while dancing with pitchforks. The Hokage sweat dropped and the Fire Lord's wife screamed out, "My poor baby, stop at this instant." Naruto said of course as he extended his wrist blade and sliced the ice, metal and fire in half, and Tora fell to the ground shaking. The Fire Lord's wife said, "How could you? You were to capture her and return her unharmed." Naruto pulled out a scroll and said, "Correction milliseconds. The mission states that I was to return Tora alive. The condition of life was not discussed, so therefore I acted well within my rights." The woman squeezed the life out of the cat and said, "Well, don't do it again." Naruto said, "That will be an extra 50 for washing and killing the fleas." The woman said it was not stated in the contract. Naruto said, "Then make sure the next time you state what condition she's returned in. She might be missing a leg otherwise." The woman said, "I hate you." Naruto said, "The feeling's mutual lady, the feeling's mutual. I have only captured her how many times, Gigi?" The third sighed and said 102 times in 2 months. Naruto smiled and she said, "Very well, thank you again." As she walked away. Naruto sighed and said, "That cat is a mutant. It's got to be immortal. I have roasted, toasted, frozen, boiled, skinned, and grilled that damn cat so many times, and it still comes back for more." The third sighed and said, "So do you want any more missions today?" Naruto said, "No, 10 were enough for today unless I can get a C rank or higher. I mean I have more missions than any other genin team and I am working solo, so come on, give me a bone here. I'm going crazy here." The third sighed and said, "I'm sorry Naruto, but after what happened with Danzo, most of the academy students dropped out because they were not ready to deal with bloodshed. Out of a class of 42 students including you, we had a total of 8 after that day. I was only able to form 2 teams of 3 and Kakashi took Sasuke as an apprentice because he's the only one who can teach him how to use his bloodline, and since you can't use hand signs, Kakashi can't teach you anything you don't already know from the scrolls I gave you. You're either going to have to wait for the Chunin exams and test out or wait until another team loses a member besides Team 8 and 10 or someone picks you for their team." Naruto sighed and said, "I know, the clan heads are still scared of me. I get it. Well, if you need me I will be around, somewhere. Take it easy Gigi." As he turned and walked out the door. As Naruto was walking down the road he saw Team Guy walking back into the village from a mission and he smiled and said, "How's it going?" Neji glared but said nothing. Lee, who was wearing an outfit like Neji, said, "Everything is alright, Neji is still upset with me and refuses to talk to me normally." Neji said, "It is all I can do Lee-sama, after all you are my master now." Lee sighed and Naruto said, "Still no luck in getting out of it?" Lee said, "No, none." Tenten said, "Don't worry Lee, I'm sure we will find some way to get you out of this arranged marriage. I still can't believe the Hyugas would have such a law." Lee nods and Guy said, "Well, we must be going. We need to see the Hokage." Just then a shout of "Come back Tora" echoed from down the street. Naruto's eyes glossed over and the sky darkened and lightning struck the same spot 9 times in a row and Naruto turned and looked and saw a smoking Tora stepping out the hole and Naruto said, "Damn it, I swear that cat is immortal." As he saw the Fire Lord's wife run up and grab the cat and cry over it. Tenten shook her head and asked, "So have you gotten a team yet?" Naruto said, "No, everyone is still scared of me, I swear nothing ever changes." "Well, I hate to keep you waiting to see the Hokage, so I better get going." As Naruto took a scroll out of his pocket and unsealed a bottle of homebrew and took a swig as he walked away sadly. Lee saw him go and looked down and said, "It seems that he is fated as we are Neji, you to the branch house, me to marry the heir and him to be alone." As they all turned and walked away. Tenten sighed and thought back to the day after she slapped Naruto. Flashback. Iruka walked into class with Team Guy and Iruka said, "Thanks for coming and helping me get all the paperwork organized for this year's class Team 9, I really appreciate it since I don't have an assistant any longer to help with it. Let me get the team selection out of the way and we can proceed." Now Team 1 to 7 are on reserve list for possible teams should any of the students who quit this week change their minds, so at the moment, Team 8 will be Shino, Hinata, and Kiba, Team 9 is still active, and Team 10 will be Ino, Shikamaru, and Choji. Sasuke, you are being taken as an apprentice to Hada Kakashi, seeing as he is the only one who can help you with your bloodline. As for you Echo, the Hokage wanted me to inform you that currently, since you are more advanced than any of the other students due to your prior training, you will be doing solo mission until a team can be found to place you on. You are to report for your first mission tomorrow at 7 AM and as for the others teams, please wait for your Jounin instructors. Thank you all and please look out for each other and be safe. Thank you." As he walked out the door with Team 9 following. Then flashback. Tenten shook her head and remembered later that day when she found Naruto sitting on the Hokage monument. Flashback end. Tenten was walking to one of her favorite places in the village, the Hokage monument, when she saw someone sitting on the head of the yondaime and frowned for a moment realizing who it was and thought, "Damn it, why does he have to be here? This is my spot to come to be alone, why does he have to be here?" until the person sitting down said if you want, I can leave. It's not like I'm wanted here anyways. As he took a swig of his moonshine. Denton thought Hess really down about the team selection. Truth is I would be. As she said no, it's okay, I can come back later. Naruto turned and said no, it's your village and probably your favorite place. I'm sorry I disturbed your sanctuary. I just wanted some fresh air and to be away from everyone for a while, so I will just be going. As he got up and began to walk away. As he was about to pass Denton, she grabbed his wrist and said stop. You don't have to leave. Naruto said yeah I do. You're mad at me about yesterday and I admit I was wrong, so there is no reason I should force you to be friendly with me when you don't want to, so I will be on my way. As he tried to walk away, but Denton refused to let him go. Denton said sorry for slapping you. It's just nobody ever figured it out like you did yesterday and it felt like you were judging me. Naruto sighed and looked at the sky and said, it's a bad habit I have. When I see someone is hurting for some reason, I try to help where I can. Sometimes it works and the person I help can move on with their lives, but sometimes it blows up in my face. I guess it's just my way of thanking those who helped me when I needed them by trying to do the same for others. Denton asked how did you know I felt that way? As she let his wrist go. Naruto walked over and sat down against a tree and said I could say I use my powers to read your mind, but this time it's not true. I saw the pain you hide in your eyes. I've seen so much pain in my life that I can read people by their eyes usually. After hearing you talk about your past it was easy to figure out where the pain came from. I thought that you probably hide it from everyone because you don't have anyone to talk to it about, so I thought that I could be the one to listen to it and maybe make a friend in the process. Denton frowned thinking it over as she sat down beside him and said well you should try to control yourself and not try and butt into people's lives all the time since it brings up painful memories, but you're right about me. I never told anyone about the pain I feel knowing I was abandoned and never knowing where I came from. Naruto said don't worry about it. My lips are sealed and unless Kakashi hurt us no one else knows either. Denton looked toward the setting sun and asked what did you mean by powers? Naruto closed his eyes and said remember how I told you I was a lab rat after I was kidnapped? Denton nodded slowly and Naruto said well over the year I was held I had multiple DNA samples put into my body as the guy tried to turn me into a super weapon that he could reproduce for his own personal army. The DNA came from those who came and saved me and later became my family. He had gotten it from each of them through traps and other means over the years and he respected their abilities because they were the only ones who could ever actually stop his plans. Naruto held up his hand and his wrist blade shot out and Naruto said this is called adamantium. It's one of the strongest metals known to exist. Once it is heated and molded it becomes indestructible. It can even cut a diamond like it was paper. My entire skeleton has been completely infused with it so I can never break any bones. As he withdrew his blade. Denton was shocked and asked you magnetism, was that also given to you? Naruto nods and a kunai from Denton's weapon pouch flew up and Naruto said this power came from a man I consider an uncle. He goes by the codename Magneto. It is how I can fly as well as move any metal. I can make metal bend and mold by my will. Denton was amazed by this and asked what other powers do you have? Naruto chuckled and said you're not scared of it. Denton said no, they sound pretty cool. Naruto smiled and said thanks. Most people when they learn of them become scared. Well, I guess the next power I can show you is this. As he held up his ungloved hand and a rose made out of ice formed and Naruto handed it to Denton who blushed and he said I have mastery over ice. I got the DNA from someone about 3 years older than us whose codename is Iceman. I think of him as a cousin. Denton said that is so cool. I wish I could meet these people. They sound interesting. Naruto smiled a small smile and said maybe they plan to come for the Chunin exams. Well I guess I can show you my next power. Denton gaped and said you have more. Naruto said yeah, I got 3 others. He then reached into his pocket and pulled out a lighter and lit it and he moved his gloved hand holding a ball of fire and said this is my next power. It is the ability to manipulate fire. I can't start fires, but if there is any source of flames nearby I can control it to become bigger or smaller or as the flame took the shape of a man and a woman and they began to dance together. Naruto said I got this power from a man whose codename is Pyro. Wolf best way to describe him is a pain in the ass. He like the guy every family has they don't like to talk about. He constantly goes out of his way to annoy me. One time I was flying over the Arizona desert in my skyhopper. Denton asked what is a skyhopper and what Arizona? Naruto said Arizona is the name of a location like Konoha, Suna, and such. It's just a place with borders ruled by a government. As for a skyhopper. It's a machine that let people fly great distance and they don't need these powers to do it. The machines do it. Now as I was saying I was flying over the desert one time and my energy cells needed to recharge so I went in for a landing. While I was waiting for them to recharge, he followed me and showed up challenging me to a spar. I agreed and I beat him, and to pay me back for beating him, he set my skyhopper on fire. I was around 120 miles from the nearest city, so I had to completely scrap my skyhopper using my powers to turn it into a glider and use my powers to get it in the air and glide for several hours in the desert in the heat, and to add to it, he decided to have some fun and started shooting fireballs at my metal glider, making it hotter also. All because I froze his balls. Denton burst out laughing and said, "Oh, I wish I could have seen that. I bet it was hilarious." Naruto said it was when I got my revenge. Like me, he can't actually start a fire, so I convinced my friend Toad to slip a sleeping pill in his drink one day, and I took him up to Antarctica, which is a place that is completely covered in ice, and stripped him down to his boxers, and along with 2 pieces of wood and a map and a note telling where his way off the island was, which was 20 miles away. When he woke up, he was pissed and was freezing, and after 20 minutes he finally got enough heat with those 2 sticks to start a small fire, and then he had to completely cover his body in flames, which started melting the ice trying to put out his fire, burned off his boxers also, and he only got to look at the map before it caught on fire, so he had to wander around for around 6 hours till he finally found his way out. Boy, was he pissed. Too bad Mom and Magneto got involved. They wound up putting us in the metal cocoon and threw us into a lake with a small portable air tank and told us we had to make peace for the next hour or die in the cocoon. We made peace alright. We beat the shit out of each other and I waited for them to come and get us after knocking him out. Denton smiled and said, "These stories sound so cool. I wish I could have known you before now. I bet we could have had some fun together." Naruto said, "Thanks. Me too." They sat in silence for a few minutes and Denton asked, "What are your other 2 powers?" Naruto said, "Well, one of them I got is super healing. I can heal from most wounds in a matter of seconds. There is an extent to how much I can heal, but for the most part it's good. My last power is physic powers." Denton thought that means he can read minds. She heard in her head only some of them. As she went wide-eyed. Naruto looked down and away and Denton said, "Whoa, that's freaky." Naruto said, "Yeah, I'm not as strong as the Professor of Phoenix and I can only hear surface thoughts. I can't invade people's minds stealing information or make them do what I want, but if people are thinking to themselves just like you did, I can pick up on it. It's hard to control it when I am around large groups of people because it sounds like everyone talking at once. I usually have to focus on one person at a time." Denton said, "I see. So what's your last power?" Naruto frowned and said, "It's the power I got from my mother. It's probably the most dangerous one for me than any of them. As long as I have more than 1/10 of my chakra in my body, I don't have to worry about it, but if I go past that amount where it gets to where I could die from chakra exhaustion, then if anyone were to touch me, my body would steal their chakra, and if they had any powers it would steal those also, depending on how long the person touches me, it could even kill them." Denton paled and said, "I see, so your mother can't touch anyone." Naruto said, "For over 10 years she had not been able to touch another living person. Then came the day they rescued me, and I was able to touch her without dying. That meant more to her than anything else to finally be able to touch another beast." Another friend tested me and her several times and the only difference we could find was I had large amounts of chakra in my body and her body did not. In fact, they never even knew about chakra until they got the scrolls from the Hokage on it. They then tested the others and found they had chakra even though they never used it, but she did not have, but just enough to stay alive. We found where a person could transfer chakra to another and we experimented between me and her and was able to get her own reserves to that of an academy student in comparison, but she got her control near perfect with it. She has learned to stop the flow to use her normal power and let it flow normal, and she could touch others. Denton seemed to calm down and said, "Sorry." Naruto looked confused and asked why. Denton looked away and said, "I got scared a moment when you told me I could die from touching you." Naruto waved his hand and said, "Don't worry about it. I got it under control so as to not hurt anyone, but thanks." Denton smiled and said, "Hey look, the sun's setting." Naruto said, "Yeah, I can see why you like it here." As they sat watching the sunset in comfortable silence. Then flashback. Lee, like Denton, was also thinking about that day and what happened. Flashback. When Lee woke up, his head was hurting. The last thing he could remember was taking a drink of something and he looked around and saw he was in a room he did not recognize. He looked over and saw his green spandex outfit sitting on a chair and he looked down and saw he was totally naked. He blushed and looked around and thought, where am I and what happened? He tensed as he felt a hand slowly rub across his shoulder and he turned and blinked and fainted. When he came to, he saw the girl who was in bed with him before now sitting beside the bed in a chair looking down with Hiashi standing behind her with a look of pure rage on his face and a black eye and said, "I don't know what you think you were doing yesterday, boy, but you have not only tarnished my daughter's reputation but also the entire Hyuga clan reputation." When you burst through our compound doors and not only defeated all the guards, but made it past me and slept with my daughter here, you soiled our clan's honor. Now how do you propose we should deal with this matter? Lee gulped and said, I am willing to do whatever I must to restore your clan's honor. The Ashi breathed in and out heavily and said, then I have no choice in the matter. I had hoped you would act cowardly so I could kill you. Seeing as you have enacted the laws of my clan, you must marry my daughter Hinata here and take over as the next clan head when I step down. Lee blinked and asked what? The Ashi said, one of the guards you knocked out yesterday when you came in here screaming carring my daughter was the head of the branch house of the Hyuga clan. By doing so you automatically become the new head of the branch house, even if you are not a Hyuga born. This law was created because the branch house is often married to non-Hyugas, and should all the Hyuga branch members be killed, the non-Hyuga branch members would need a way to select the new head of the branch house. Now that explains how you joined the Hyuga clan. Now another law states that should the head of the branch family challenge the main branch head in combat and lose, they would forfeit their life. However, if they challenge the main branch and win, then they would then have the right to try and gain the favor of one of the members of the main branch or their heirs to decide where they would join the main branch at. When I tried to stop you I lost and you then brought my daughter in here and I don't know what happened during the time I was out, but seeing your current state of dress and the fact that my daughter was naked as well, I have no choice but to deem you have gained her favor, and as she is currently the heiress and because of this event I can no longer put her in the branch house without having to release all the branch house members for breaking the clan laws. You are now as her future husband the next head of the Hyuga clan. The Hokage has already been informed of this when I went to him this morning asking for permission to kill you, and he reminded me of these laws. Count yourself lucky. Should you refuse my daughter's hand in marriage and the responsibilities that come with it, I will kill you. Good day. Lee blinked and fell back on the bed as Ashi slammed the door shut and it echoed in Lee's head. Lee asked, did we, as he looked over at Hinata. Hinata said in a very stuttery voice, no, we both drank that funny drink you had, since you got 2 more bottles of it somewhere while we outran the branch house member who was goading me yesterday and came back her laughing and joking you passed out and I got hot and after opening the window, I was still hot so I slipped into my lightest night shirt and sometime during the night we both got rid of it and your cloths. I already had myself checked this morning when I went to wash the sweat off of me when father came to check on me and found us in bed together and nothing happened, but father does not believe me. I'm sorry. Lee said, don't worry about it. It will work out in the end, I hope be the way, what's your name? Lee. Hinata blushed and the alarm clock on her bed went off and started to play the end of, and I don't even know my last name. Hinata and Lee both thought damn fate, just had to be that song. As they looked at the radio alarm clock and saw it was 6:40 am. Hinata said, Hinata, Lee-kun. As she looked away. Just then a knock was heard on the door and Hinata said, enter. Niji opened the door and looked at Lee with hatred in his eyes and said, our team has a meeting in 20 minutes, Lee-sama. Spitting out the sama as he bowed before walking away. Then flashback. Fenton sighed as they walked into the Hokage office and Guy said, greeting Hokage-sama, our mission was as youthful as ever as a success. The third nods and said, very well Team 9, you have the rest of the day off and tomorrow as well. You're dismissed. I said, alright team, let's go show everyone our flames of youth. As he ran away. Lee sighed and walked after him normally and thought, I hate being a Hyuga now. I have to worry about the look of the clan. I had to get my hair and eyebrows to look normal and change my cloths, and if I act like myself and embarrass the Hyuga clan, Hinata is punished. I hate this. As he walked out with Niji behind him and to the right. Fenton walked toward the door, but as her teammates walked out she closed the door and the third looked at her and said, is there something wrong Fenton? Fenton asked, what are the exact requirements for a team for Echo? The third said, I'm sorry, but I can't tell you Fenton without his permission. Fenton walked over and slammed her fist into the table and said, I don't care. I want to know what it takes to allow him a mission out of the village. The third looked at her and saw how determined she was and said, he would have to have a team for backup as well as someone who will watch him to ensure he returns to Konoha. He is under probation from being away from the village for so many years. It's the laws and even if I don't like it I can't show favoritism and bend the rules for him. He won't be allowed to leave the village without a team or until he becomes a chunin during the exams. Fenton sighed and bit her lip as she looked around and said, I would like to make a request. The third said, and what might that be? Fenton bit her lip and said, I would like to request a transfer from Team 9 for personal reasons. The third frowned and asked, I am sorry Fenton, but there is no team currently available for you to join. Should one open up I can move you then, but until then you are stuck with your team. Fenton turned and said, I believe you are mistaken Hokage-sama, but there is another team who currently needs a member and I would like to request to join that team. The third asked, and which team would that be? Fenton said, I would like to be teamed up with Echo sir. The third sighed and said sorry Tenten, but the problem still is the same one. If I transfer you the problem is you would need to a sensei. Tenten smiled and said sorry sir, but I think you are misunderstanding. I am not asking for a standard jounin team. I am asking for apprenticeship under Echo. The third blinked and asked what? Tenten said from what I understand from the day where my team helped Haruka at the academy when teams were announced, the reason Echo is not currently with a team is because his skills are too advanced for fresh out of the academy students and there is currently no jounin who is able to teach him because of his unique abilities. However, he could classify as a sensei in the fact he has unique fighting skills with weapons and other abilities that no one else in the village has. Since I am a weapon expert myself as you already know and my current sensei has no real knowledge to further teach me any new skills in my chosen field of specialty, then I would like to learn of the weapons that Echo uses to improve my own fighting skills. As such we would be classified as a two-person team and would then meet the requirements that you stated earlier as I can vouch his return to the village. The third sat and thought for several moments and asked how long have you been thinking of this? Tenten said I have been researching it for the last 3 weeks sir, since I noticed that Echo is getting increasingly depressed and when not on missions has been drinking that stuff he calls homebrew constantly. I believe thought is unhealthy for him and I would like to help him so please, would you approve my request? The third closed his eyes and said I will consider it but do not approach Echo with this. I will give you my answer tomorrow. Tenten bowed and said thank you sir. As she turned and left. The third shook his head and thought she is one hell of a firespitter, but she's right, Naruto has been getting depressed here lately and has been getting frustrated with D-rank mission. As it stands when his 1-year agreement is up he will leave the village forever unless something happens soon. Perhaps a friend will help make him stay. The next day Naruto walked into the mission office and the third looked at him and said Echo, please wait for a few moments. I have a mission I would like to discuss with you. Naruto nods and walks over to the waiting area as several other people came in and got missions. After a few minutes he saw Team 9 walk in and the third smiled and said ah yes, Team 9, I have a 3-man mission for you. It is to deliver a scroll to Suna. I frowned and said sorry sir, but I don't believe my team is ready to do missions on their own without a jounin sensei. The third said I know and I agree with you, but your team is currently only a 3-man team as one of you students has requested an apprenticeship in the chosen field of expertise the student has chosen and I have agreed with it. Tenten smiled and Guy looked at each of his students and said well I suppose it would be you Tenten that has requested this since you seem excited. Tenten turned and bowed and said, you are correct Guy sensei, I believe I have learned all about weapon mastery I can from you. I do admit I thank you for improving my taijutsu, but I want to earn the nickname I was given as the weapon mistress of Konoha. It is for that reason I requested this. I have no hard feeling for you or anyone else on the team, but I feel I must move on to improve further. I hope there are no hard feelings and I would be glad to train with you anytime you are available for advice on my taijutsu. I said I am proud of you Tenten. I admit I have been expecting this for a while, but I did not want to force you to move on until you were ready yourself. I would be honored to allow you to train with my team anytime you are available, but I would like to ask who you are to train under so I can give them any details of your training should they ask. Tenten said I have requested from the Hokage to train under Echo. Naruto who was in the corner drinking suddenly spit out his drink making everyone look at him and he looked at her and asked I believe I heard wrong. Did you say you wanted to train under me? I frowned and said as he looked at the Hokage may I inquire as to why you have agreed to let him train her? No offense to Echo, but he is only a genin himself. The third said I am aware of that guy, but as Tenten pointed out to me he does have weapon experience with weapons of designs and use that we have no knowledge of and it would be good for Konoha to have several people who can use those skills so they don't die out. I believe that both would grow from this as Echo would get a chance to work with a team of Konoha ninja and learn our methods and Tenten can learn his training skills and methods as well. I bowed and said sorry for the questioning of your decision Hokage-sama. I just wanted to make sure he was qualified. Naruto frowned as he walked over and the third said here is the scroll guy and you team may leave when ready. Echo, Tenten I will discuss this with you in a moment. I team left with Lee wishing Tenten luck and Niji glaring at Naruto. After they were gone the third said now Echo, I would like for the rest of the week for you and Tenten to train together so you can accurately test her skills. Come back in 1 week to begin missions. You're both dismissed. Naruto asked don't I get a say in accepting her as my apprentice? The third said well you do, but if you refuse you will be stuck still doing D-rank missions until the exams because I doubt I will be able to find another team for you. So do you object? Naruto frowned and said no, I accept. He then turned to Tenten and asked what exactly do you plan to learn from me? Tenten said I am a long-range weapon user. I would like to learn anything from more long-range weapons to close-range weapons that you may know as well as any other useful advice you have. Naruto frowned and said if I train you it won't be easy. You also won't be able to teach anything to anyone until you have mastered it also. Do you accept? Tenten nods and Naruto looked at the third and said I hope you're right about this. As he turned and left with Tenten following him. They walked for several minutes in silence and Naruto asked while walking in front of her why. Tenten looked at him and asked why what. Naruto stopped and reached for his glasses and pulled them off as he turned around showing Tenten his eyes for the first time and asked why did you give up your own happiness with your team for me? Tenten said I did what was right for me. I did not do it for you. Naruto grabbed Tenten's arm before she had a chance to say or do anything and the next thing she knew she was in a white room. Naruto's voice echoed from everywhere in the room and it said you say you did this for you. Well if that's true then show me you truly are doing it for you. As the room changed to a view of Konoha and then Tenten saw dead bodies everywhere of people she knew and she heard laughing and she turned and saw 20 Iwanins and one said well, what do we have here? Looks like we get to have a little fun boys before we kill her. Another one stepped forward and sneered and said I want first dibs. Another said no me. One more stepped forward and said why don't we just all take her at the same time. As he pulled out a weapon. Tenten was getting scared. She put her hands together and tried to dispel it and then she tried to bite her lip and it still would not work. She slowly reached for her weapon pouch and cursed herself mentally as she pulled out only 2 kunes and she got ready to fight. One jumped toward her and she jumped back and threw her kunai and hit him in the head, killing him as 2 more jumped forward and one said, that was stupid girl, you just got rid of one of your weapons. How many more do you have? Tenten said enough. With venom in her voice. The man sneered and ran at her as his partner went to flank her from behind. Tenten jumped away and was hit by a third one who kicked her in the ribs, making her fall to the ground and cough up some blood. The 2 original men charged at her and she flipped over to where she was on her knees when she was punched in the face flying toward the wall. When she hit it she felt 2 pairs of hands grab her wrist and hold her to the side and saw both men she was fighting holding her and the third one was slowly walking forward, waving the kunai he pulled out of the body of the man she killed. He walked till he was in front of her and said, what would you do now little girl, would you scream for mercy or give up and die? Tenten sneered at him and said I will see you in hell. As she spat in his face and jerked her head forward hitting him in the nose and as he stumbled backwards, she kicked him in the nuts and used her feet to grab the blade of the kunai in the man's hand and stabbed the man on her left. The man cried out in pain and let her go as he went to pull the weapon out and Tenten used her free hand to grab around the man still holding her other arm's neck and snapped it as she jumped away. The man she kicked in the nuts got up and screamed get the bitch. As the other 16 men all started to move in at her. Tenten turned and began to run and she was looking right and left for a place to hide. She saw a store that had the front glass busted out and a body laying on the ground and she jumped inside and hid behind the counter as she tried to catch her breath. She looked around for anything she could find as a weapon and thought what the hell's going on. This is no genjutsu and these are actual wounds I have. Is this real? The voice screamed I found her. As she looked over the counter and saw several men running for her and she tried to get away as they drew close drawing weapons and throwing them at her. She closed her eyes waiting for death. After several moments she looked up and saw everything was frozen and then she heard clapping and she turned and looked and saw Naruto walking past the men and said well done Tenten, I must say you surprised me. Tenten asked what's going on as she got into a defensive position. Naruto smiled and said end program. As the room changed back to a white room and Naruto said this is called the danger room. In it I can create any kind of battle situation that looks, tastes, smells, feels and thinks like a real thing. I wanted to test you and see if you were truly serious about training under me, as well as seeing if you would fight until the end or give up when faced with a hopeless battle, as well as testing your current skill levels. I must say I am impressed. You killed 2 ninja, wounded fatally a third, while injuring a fourth however you did make several mistakes which we will discuss later. For now follow me and we can get you treated for the wound on your side from hitting the ground. As he turned and started to walk toward a door that just opened up. Tenten blinked and looked around and said wait, you mean none of this was real? Naruto stopped and said think of it as a real genjutsu that can't be broken. If you are going to train under me then this is where most of your training will be done at. If you wish to change your mind the time to do so is now. As he turned to look at her. Tenten looked at Naruto with determination in her eyes and said I won't give up Echo. Naruto smiled and said good choice Cash, by the way, the name's Naruto. As he turned and walked out the door. Tenten blinked and blinked again as her mind processed what she just heard and she ran after him still holding her side and she caught up to him and saw a hallway and asked, where are we? Naruto said around 100 feet underground on the X level of my home. Now this is the med bay over here. Follow me. As he walked inside a room when the door opened and Tenten looked around in awe and amazement. Naruto sighed when he saw the look on her face and said now don't jump to conclusions, but I need to ask you 2 questions, and then I can treat you. Are you or could you be pregnant? Tenten blushed beet red and asked what? Naruto sighed and said I have to ask because if you're pregnant the treatment I am about to give you could kill the child. It's standard procedure to ask all women if they are or could be pregnant. Tenten blushed and said no, not possible. Naruto nods as he walks over to a computer and starts to type on it and asked when was your last monthly. Tenten could have fainted from embarrassment right then and asked why do you need to know that? Naruto sighed and said it so that way the treatment will know what to expect should you be on it or if it finds bleeding inside of you so it would treat you accordingly. I am sorry but it's standard questions again. Tenten sighed and said the 7th alright is that all? Naruto nods and said yes, now if you would step behind that curtain over there and change into the outfit provided the medic machines will treat you from fire. When you're done and have been released look for a room that says library and I will meet you there. As he got up and started to leave. Tenten said wait, you're leaving? Naruto looked at her and asked, would you want me here to see you possibly naked at times while they help you? I can if you want but. Tenten turned red and said no, that's alright, go. Naruto turns and starts to leave and Tenten said wait Naruto. Naruto stopped and asked yes. Tenten asked is Naruto your real name or another code name? Naruto said my real name. Tenten asked why did you tell me it? Naruto looked at the door and said I guess it's because I finally trust you enough to call you a friend. I don't tell anyone my name unless I trust them. It's one of the unwritten rules of mutants. As he walked out of the room. Tenten smiled a small smile until a human-looking machine moved forward from the wall and said please change cash so we can begin medical procedures. Tenten asked what are you? The machine said your doctor. Now move. An hour later Tenten was walking into the library and saw Naruto sitting on a couch and Naruto read out loud, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet, but even the most beautiful rose can be deadly. As he slapped the book close and asked so how do you feel? Tenten said okay I guess Naruto. I am a little sore, but that machine said it would be gone by tomorrow. I never seen some of the things it used before. Naruto said I'm not surprised. Things are different from my home. Tenten looked confused and asked what do you mean? This is your home. Naruto closed his eyes as he leaned back and said home is where the heart is and for me my heart is with my family. I am here but my heart is with them. Tenten frowned and said you sound like you miss them. Naruto said I do. I only have 3 people here in this village who I consider close. One is the Hokage, but things have changed between us. Another is Kakashi, but since he has been training Sasuke I have only seen him twice and the last is you. Everyone else either totally avoids me or only says what they have to and then leaves. Tenten looked down and asked so what is it you wanted to talk to me about? Naruto said well let's start with your test. Your flexibility is good, you could become good with a sword or a staff. Your throwing accuracy is great, but you made several mistakes that could have cost you your life. First was when you discovered you had only 2 weapons, you threw one at the first target, leaving you with only 1 weapon, limiting your defense and offensive abilities. The next mistake you made when you decided to actually engage the large number of ninja where they could all attack you at once. You should have tried to flee breaking them up into smaller group for easier attack. You also ignored several things that could have been used as weapons or distractions while running when you did run, and the last mistake you made was hiding while on the run. I admit the hiding was good idea, but when you stopped you lost all the advantages you had in the battle. If you hide you should also conceal your chakra and if possible henge to hide yourself. You saw the bodies everywhere dead. Why not henge yourself to look dead while leaving yourself an escape route? If they were chasing you then it would be harder for them to detect a concealed chakra signature. The last mistake you made was when you decided to close your eyes when they threw the weapons at you. You forgot you could have replaced yourself with one of the enemies and took off running again. Yes I do realize replacing yourself with a human target was hard, but you could also have replaced yourself with a chair a few feet away and then grab some of the kunes to make a last stand. If you are going to die, don't give up and fight until you are dead. Make sure the enemy does not get the pleasure of going home unwounded. Make them remember you as the most badass bitch this side of hell they were ever going to meet. Tenten listened to Naruto and looked down during most of it, but by the end, she had a new fire in her eyes and said, you're right Naruto. I guess I never thought of that. I will show them next time. Naruto smiled and said I know you will Cash. I know you will. Now I guess I better show you around before letting you head home. I already have you recorded in the security system. Tenten asked why do you keep calling me Cash? Naruto said respect. I gave you that nickname and I am trusting you as I would any of my friends or family, so I will not call you anything but Cash until you give me permission to call you your real name when I have earned your trust. Tenten smiled a little and said tell you what, how about when it's just us we call ourselves our real name, but when we are around others we call ourselves our other name. Naruto said whatever you say Tenten. Tenten said, thanks for trusting me Naruto, I was wondering, what's your last name? Naruto got up and said it doesn't matter, I don't use it and probably never will. The boy whose last name I have died many years ago, for now I am Naruto, codename Echo, genin of Konoha and a member of both the X-Men and the Brotherhood. The maelstrom of Geonosis. Tenten frowned and thought the more I learn about him the more I get confused. After Naruto showed Tenten around and introduced her to the Sentinel security they were standing at the door to go outside and Tenten asked so you live here all alone? Naruto said yeah, my family made this place into a mini version of my home back with my family. The only ones who can get past the front door are you, me and Kakashi when he comes by, but that has only been to say hi and that he would be busy more. Well come by tomorrow around 7 AM and we will begin training. Tenten frowned and said alright, sleep well Naruto. Naruto nods and said you also Tenten. As he opened the door to let her leave. Tenten walked by him and stopped for a second and said thanks for trusting me. As she quickly kissed his cheek and ran off leaving a stunned mutant. Naruto sighed and said well that was interesting. What if Naruto son of Magneto's men, end here and thanks for watching my video till the end.